Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto goes to find allies in Bleach. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by ROCKER 1600 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Prologue. Shinobi quote. We are humans, we don't know what kind of people we truly are until the moment before our deaths. As death comes to embrace you, you will realize what you are. That's what death is, don't you think? Itachi Uchiha. Naruto Uzumaki woke up to find that he was lying in sea of white light. As he sat up he could hear Kurama, usually known as the nine-tailed fox, saying something. I guess our time has ended, the tailed beast said matter-of-factly, to which. I guess so. Naruto replied. He then smiled and said, thank you Kurama, thank you for sticking with me even in death. Kurama simply replied with a subtle HMMPH. Naruto then began collecting his thoughts about it happened until then. It had all happened so quickly. After he had freed the Bijuu and their Jinchuriki from Tobi's grasp. He then proceeded to end the battle, despite the protests from the rest of the Konoha 11. Before he had approached Tobi, however, a redeemed Sasuke, who had taken a near-fatal blow meant for Naruto after Sasuke's brother Itachi, revealed the actual truth regarding the Uchiha clan and Konoha, said Naruto, please come back alive or not at all. Naruto agreed to do so before finally engaging Tobi while everyone in the Shinobi alliance, who were too exhausted to continue fighting, fell back. Tragically, in order to finally defeat Tobi and stop his threat to the world, Naruto was forced to make the ultimate sacrifice in order to win the battle. Now he was preparing to see his mom and dad again in the afterlife. As he waited, Naruto thought to himself, even though I didn't become Hokage, I was still able to protect my friends. I can move without only one regret. He then thought to himself, though I wish I still be with them. All of a sudden the sea of white around Naruto exploded in blinding flash before Naruto even had a chance to react. He didn't know yet, but his desire to protect the bonds he had gained would give him new powers and a second chance. Chapter 1. Arrival and Meeting. Disclaimer. I don't own Naruto and/or Bleach. Captain's Assembly Hall, Sirte, Soul Society. The captains of Gate 13 were anxious about this next meeting. The meeting was announced so suddenly and with such urgency that no one spoke a word for what appeared to be hours. They had good reason to be concerned. The recent betrayal of Sasuke-san, Jin Ichimaru and Kanem Tosen has caused massive unrest throughout the Soul Society. The tension was elevated a few hours before this meeting when the largest surge of spiritual pressure ever recorded in the history of the Soul Society appeared on Mount Kifushi with no explanation as to why this was happening. As if to complicate things, the spiritual energy on the mountain began to move, along with an unknown energy. The energy then vanished or was being suppressed by its owner. The captains were still not sure. The silence permeated the room and not even the head captain, a physically built but very old man named Jinrikisai Shijikuni Yamamoto, would say anything, which caused further anxieties among the captains. This silence ended as the door to their meeting place burst open and two people came in. One of them was a petite woman with pale skin, violet eyes and black hair, while the other was a fairly tall and lean teenage boy with brown eyes, peach skin and orange hair. His face is usually set in a permanent scowl and his eyebrows drawn together, though he was too exhausted to do anything but gasp for air. These two Soul Reapers were well known among the Gate 13, and the captains realized that these two were responsible for this meeting. Yamamoto said to the two, Ichigo, Rukia, you two arrived even sooner than I expected. Ichigo was out of breath so he spoke while gasping for air. I got here as soon as I told you of his arrival. Settle down Ichigo and catch your breath, Yamamoto replied. The other captains were now completely confused, so Yamamoto turned his attention to explaining the purpose of this meeting. There is a new soul that will be arriving. It is extremely important that we locate him and bring him here, for he will be trained as a Soul Reaper. Soifin, one of the more prideful captains, scoffed at the head captain before asking, how do we know if he will even have the spiritual energy needed to become a Soul Reaper? You have already felt his power. It is the source of both the spiritual pressure and the other energy that appeared on Mount Kifushi, Yamamoto stated, shocking everyone in the room except for Rukia and Ichigo, and for good reason. The amount of power emanating from the mountain was greater than of every person in this room, along with the three traitorous captains, put together. Another one of the captains, Toshiro Hitsugaya, asked with obvious interest, who is this soul? The kid's name is Naruto Uzumaki. Ichigo told me about a dream he had in which he saw him and 12 other teenagers. The reply came from Rukia, catching everyone off guard. What she would say next would shock the usually unflinching captains. He's a ninja from the chakra realm, an. That what the Reapers call Naruto's world, for obvious reasons, Rukia stated. After a few moments of silence, the shock finally surfaced on the faces of the captains as it finally became clear what this was about. Byakuya Kichiki, Rukia's adoptive brother-in-law, was the one to state the significance. "The sage of the six paths reincarnate," he said, to which Yamamoto nodded. "We must locate him quickly. Inform your lieutenants of the soul we're looking for, but not of his identity," Yamamoto declared before splitting the captains into search parties, minus himself and Mayuri Kuritsuchi, as Yamamoto was determined not to let this soul end up as one of Mayuri's test subjects, parties. Ichigo and Rukia were to go with Byakuya and Kenpachi Zaraki. Before the team set out, Ichigo was asked to give a description of Naruto as he saw him in his dream. Ichigo said, "He has blonde hair, blue eyes, wears an orange and black tracksuit, as well as a black headband with a piece of metal on it, emblazoned with a stylized leaf. He is about my age, is a little shorter than me, and has 3 whisker marks on both of his cheeks. He also smiles constantly, though his smile is more warm and reassuring than Jin's." The teams, satisfied with this description, scattered across the Soul Society to Naruto. Junranin District, West Rukongai, Soul Society. "We're lost, Kurama," Naruto said with a clear amount of frustration in his voice. "Don't blame me. This course of action wasn't my idea," Kurama replied. This might not even be our dimension." "Wait a minute, Kurama. Are you serious?" Naruto asked, however, had a feeling this would be the case. He realized that this place was devoid of any chakra. Instead he felt a similar type of energy, though it is much more powerful than any chakra he had ever felt. He even felt a massive amount within himself, along with a voice that calls to him now and again. In any case, he was still baffled by what he had seen up until now. After the blinding light occurred, he apparently woke up on top of a mountain, surrounded by what appeared to be a massive town. Naruto noticed that there was a massive walled complex at what appeared to be the center of the town. He figured that someone in there could tell him what he was doing here. Unfortunately, he still couldn't find a gate that would allow him to enter. He wandered through the streets of the neighborhood before coming upon a clearing. Walking through the open space, Naruto was still wondering what had happened when he heard the voice inside of him again. This time he could make out the voice as a young female. "Naruto, you're in terrible danger. To your left," warned the mysterious voice. Before Naruto could say anything, he suddenly felt a dark and menacing presence at least 20 yards away and closing fast. Acting fast, Naruto jumped backwards just in time to dodge a hand that appeared to have attempted to pierce his abdomen. Naruto took a good look at his assailant as his assailant turned to look at him. It was a slightly built male, with green eyes, messy black hair, and with skin as pale as Orochimaru's. The man had teal-colored marks that resembled tears and what appeared to be part of a broken horn mask on top of his head. The man was wearing a white jacket with a black sash and had a massive hole on his neck. "Who or what are you?" the young ninja asked with intense rage as he took a defensive stance. The man, with a frown on his face that Naruto realized hadn't changed, simply looked at him before speaking with voice that felt cold and aloof to Naruto. "My name is Ulquiorra Cypher. I am an Espada and I am under orders from my commander to capture you," he stated rather nonchalantly. Being hunted for the spirit of Kurama when he was alive, Naruto understood what he meant. This only enraged him even further. "I don't know what an Espada is," Naruto stated before he proclaimed that, "but I'm not going anywhere with you. And I promise you that I never go back on my word, Cypher." While Ulquiorra was a person that may not have understood what the human heart is or why people fought on against all odds, he did understand that this person had no intention of coming with him peacefully. Since he had no way to force Naruto to comply, Ulquiorra was forced to use more brutal methods. "Very well then. Prepare yourself for battle," Ulquiorra calmly stated. "Here he comes. I hope you're ready to fight as well, Kurama," Naruto thought as he readied himself for a tough fight. It would never occur. The view of his attacker was suddenly blocked by 4 figures. 2 of them faced the attacker, while the other 2 restrained Naruto. One of them had slate gray eyes and black hair set with unusual hairpieces, while the other was a large man with stringy black hair, one green eye with the other covered by an eye patch, and a thin scar running down the left side of his face. Naruto noticed that all of them were wearing black kimonos, with the 2 who had held him back wearing white haris on top of their kimonos. Ulquiorra, having been ordered to return to Hueco Mundo without Naruto if he was intercepted by any Soul Reapers, simply said, "It appears I'm done here." As he opened a garganta, Ulquiorra said to the young ninja, "We will meet again." He then disappeared without a trace. What happened? Was the first thought running through Naruto's mind as the 2 men let him go. The other 2 then turned around to face Naruto. One was a girl with black hair and violet eyes, and the other was a guy with orange and brown eyes. They appeared to be about his age. "Are you okay, Naruto Uzumaki?" Ichigo asked, knowing that it found him at last. Naruto's eyes widened in shock at this guy's question. After a few seconds, Naruto replied with his own question. "Who are you people? And how do you know my name?" "Junranin District, West Rukongai, Soul Society." Ichigo looked at Naruto with his usual detached expression before he replied. I'll take that as a yes. As for your question, my name is Ichigo Kurosaki, and the girl is next to me is Rukia Kichiki. I guess you already met Byakuya and Kenpachi. Ichigo pointed at the two who restrained Naruto when he told him their names, so the young ninja knew who was named what. This lessened Naruto's shock, but the young ninja was still not satisfied with the guy's answer. You still haven't told me how you know my name. I'll do you one better. The reply came from Rukia. Her reply got her Naruto's attention. If you come with us, we'll tell you why you're here and help you get back home. Naruto looked at the young girl, first with shock, then with suspicion. Even though he was not known for his intelligence, he wasn't entirely naive. He had to be sure that this wasn't some sort of trap. Why should I trust you people? You seem to have forgotten that we just saved your life. The reply came from the man with the gray eyes, whom Ichigo had called Byakuya. His voice was not as cold as Cypher's, but he still sounded too formal for Naruto's liking. Naruto also realized that Byakuya looked at him as though he might have known who he was, though Naruto, in an unusually smart decision, decided to not test him or the other three any further. He still didn't know what had happened to him, and these people may be his best chance to find some answers. You've got a good point there. Alright, I come with you guys, Naruto exclaimed. Ichigo was relieved that he didn't have to chase him down. Then follow us and try not to wander off. This is a pretty big place. No kidding. I still don't know how someone can find their way around here. Naruto thought to himself, his eyes narrowed as he was lost in his thoughts. Ichigo began walking towards the walled complex along with Rukia, with Naruto walking in between them. Ichigo looked back and realized that neither Byakuya nor Kenpachi were following. You two aren't coming? Ichigo asked with some concern. But the clear indifference to Ichigo's worries, Byakuya simply replied said he was going to look around to see if he could find any information on Naruto's would-be abductor. I need to find how Hollow was able to infiltrate this deep into the Soul Society. Naruto overheard the conversation and, being as clueless as ever, interrupted the two. What's a Hollow? I thought that creep called himself an Espada, whatever that is. That immediately got the two captains' attention. Kenpachi was, uncharacteristically, especially taken aback by this revelation. Did you just say an Espada, kid? Naruto knew there was something more to his attacker than he realized, but he still didn't understand entirely. That's what that cipher called himself. Is it such a big deal? Byakuya simply told Ichigo to report this matter to the head captain when he got there, to which Ichigo agreed to do. I guess that's enough talk. It's time we got moving, exclaimed Ichigo as he and Rukia headed to the nearest gate in order to enter into Sirte. Naruto, who had allowed his own mind to wander, suddenly realized he was about to be left behind and took off after the two Soul Reapers while yelling. Wait for me. He yelled in a childish manner. As the three got out of sight from the two captains, Kenpachi turned his attention to Byakuya. You know how lucky you are that the brat mentioned about an Espada, right? Otherwise that face you gave would have led to a fight, Kenpachi said with his usual sneer. Byakuya appeared to agree with the battle-loving 11th Division captain, something that almost never happened. It may still come to that. We'll just have to see if he finds out and how he responds. He then told Kenpachi, I hope he takes after his father. Byakuya's concerns were not without merit, for he had met the young ninja before and not in the best of circumstances. Captain Commander's Yamamoto's office, Sirte, Soul Society. This office is even bigger than Gramatsune's, Naruto thought as he entered the office of the Gate 13's leader. He was still amazed at what he already seen. After entering the walled complex, Naruto was amazed by the splendor of the buildings, which he heard were part of the Sirte, with polished walls made of some white stone and their massive size. He was also surprised by the people he had seen. Like the two people he came with, they all wore black kimonos and, though Naruto hadn't noticed it until then, different blades. The man that stood before him was no exception. It was an old man with a long white beard, long white eyebrows, and two noticeable scars above his right eye. It was his immense power, however, that really surprised Naruto, as it surpasses all the chakra levels he had seen back home. As the man began to speak, Naruto noticed that the man's eyes are partially closed. You both did well, the old man said to both Rukia and Ichigo, before turning to the young ninja and welcome to the Soul Society, Naruto Uzumaki. I'm sure you have many questions. Thank you, sir, Naruto said with a grin on his face. He then continued, and yeah, I have a lot of questions. For starters, what's the Soul Society? Yamamoto didn't appear surprised by the young boy's reaction, compared to the surprise of the two Soul Reapers. The Soul Society is the afterlife in our dimension and home to us Soul Reapers. You apparently entered this realm after you died, Yamamoto replied. So we are dead, Naruto thought to himself. After arriving at this place, he didn't know if he was dead or just having a weird dream. Naruto then realized that the old man mentioned something else that he had never heard of. A Soul Reaper. What's that? Naruto asked, as he assumed it may have been some type of weird monk. This would not be the case. May I explain this to him, head captain? I think it would be easier for him to understand if it was explained to him in small words, asked Rukia, to which the leader of the Gate 13 simply nodded. Naruto turned his attention to Rukia as she explained to him about the existence of Soul Reapers, what they do, and of their abilities. Ichigo was simply relieved that Rukia hadn't used her crappy drawings to help explain all this to Naruto. Upon hearing Rukia's explanation regarding the Zanpakuto, Naruto immediately realized something very important. Wait a minute, I've been hearing a voice of a woman inside me. Could that voice be my Zanpakuto? Naruto asked. The Reapers were somewhat taken aback by this. Are you sure about that, Naruto? Ichigo asked the young Jinchuriki. Well, I clearly heard a voice in me and it wasn't Kurama's. So yeah, I'm pretty sure, said Naruto, shrugging off their surprise. Right, Kurama, Ichigo said before coming to his senses. Kurama? Who's Kurama? Ichigo asked with obvious confusion, to which Yamamoto responded that he would get the answer to that question soon. Now that Rukia finished explaining about the Soul Reapers, I will now explain why you are here, Naruto. Yamamoto declared. Now I am sure you know about the Sage of the Six Paths and about his Rinnegan. Yeah, but what does he have to do with this? Naruto asked. Yamamoto, acting as if he was oblivious to the young Jinchuriki's questions, continued with his story. The sage had an unusual ability thanks to his Rinnegan which, unlike the others, he never revealed to anyone in your world. He was able to travel across different dimensions, including ours, Yamamoto said, clearly amused by Naruto's reaction. Kurama, did you know about this? Naruto said to the tailed beast. I'm just as surprised as you are, Naruto. He must have stopped using that ability before he created us. Kurama was rather surprised that the old man's six paths would even have this ability, and more so that he wouldn't keep it under wraps. Yamamoto decided to continue on with the story. During his time here, Sage was instrumental in putting down a major rebellion in the Soul Society hundreds of years ago. As a sign of our gratitude, we agreed to do something for him. The sage told us that one day someone who had inherited his will would come to the Soul Society. He asked us to train that person to become a Soul Reaper and to allow this person to return to their world. It took Naruto a long while before he put the pieces together and realized what the old man was trying to tell him. Wait a minute. Are you saying that I'm Naruto? Received a nod from Yamamoto before he could finish his question. The fact that you still have chakra confirms this. Ichigo suddenly interrupted the conversation. Old man Yama, before you continue, can you explain why the hell me and Rukia are still here? I was actually getting to that, Ichigo Kurosaki, Yamamoto said, a clear amount of irritation in his voice. Naruto, how would you like to train to become a Soul Reaper? Naruto answered without any hesitation. His friends back home were like a family to him and he would do anything for them. He was now being offered a chance to go back to be with his friends and, being Naruto, he was not going to let this opportunity go. I'll be back soon, guys. Just wait for a bit, Naruto thought to himself. Yamamoto then turned his attention to Ichigo. Kurosaki, I am entrusting you with Naruto Uzumaki's training. Wait. Naruto and Ichigo said simultaneously, with both of their eyes widened in shock. Ichigo managed to compose himself first. Why do I have to train him? Summer vacation ended last month. How am I going to find the time to train this kid? He was clearly enraged by this command. Kid? I'm around the same age as you, damn it. Naruto roared back at Ichigo. Silence. Yamamoto roared, successfully quieting both Naruto and Ichigo by releasing his menacing spiritual pressure. Naruto and even Kurama gained a healthy and easily justified fear of the Gate 13 leader from that time forward. That fact that his coming here was revealed to you means you are to have a part in this, Ichigo Kurosaki. Besides, you still have the mod soul, don't you? Yamamoto said, his voice clearly trying to contain his irritation. So he knows about Khan, Ichigo thought. He finally agreed to train the young ninja when Yamamoto assured Ichigo that Kisuke and Yoruichi would help him. Any more questions? Yamamoto asked the three souls. They apparently did not. Very well then. Naruto, please go with Ichigo and Rukia. Naruto simply nodded. As the three walked out of the office, Ichigo stopped again. What's wrong, Ichigo? Naruto asked the substitute Soul Reaper. He gotten comfortable enough with these two Reapers to use their actual names. Ichigo said, I need to say one more thing to old man Yama. Just wait here for a few minutes, alright? Before Harry entered the office. 5 minutes later, Ichigo came out of the office. Alright then, let's go back home. Ichigo said before he, Rukia and Naruto headed to Ichigo's hometown, which Ichigo called Karakura Town. After the two Reapers and the Reaper in training left the Soul Society, Yamamoto met with a few of the captains who had returned from the Rukongai after they were informed of the ninja's retrieval. Yamamoto gave them a debriefing regarding Naruto as well as the run-in with the Espada. Captain Sajin Kamamura was the first to voice his concerns. The fact that any ranker could infiltrate the Soul Society is very disturbing in and of itself, but if Aizen is targeting young Naruto, then he may have begun to make his next move against us. Wouldn't it make more sense to train him here? Yamamoto sighed and replied to the 7th Division in a rather weary tone. Dealing with Ichigo was tiring enough for the 2,000-year-old captain, but dealing with him and Naruto at the same time was enough to apparently drain his spiritual pressure en masse. While your concerns are not without merit, Captain Kamamura, that is something we cannot do right now. It appears that Ichigo has been chosen by fate to be his mentor and, being a human, he cannot stay here for very long periods of time. We're just going to have to leave it to Ichigo and his friends to protect Naruto. This statement unnerved the assembled captains, because while Ichigo and his friends were more than capable of handling themselves, the threat of Aizen posed towards the Soul Society was already great as it is. If the traitor got his hands on Naruto, all might be lost. Kurosaki Residence, Karakura Town, Human Realm. 1 month earlier. Ichigo, exhausted from his invasion of the Soul Society, immediately went to bed after having to dodge an ambush from Isin, his father, again. His thoughts soon began to revolve around his last opponent. Sasuke. The traitor to the Soul Society had mentioned his goals in such a cryptic message that its meaning began to torment the substitute Soul Reaper. No one stands on the top of the world. Not you, not me, not even gods. But the unbearable vacancy of the throne in the sky is over. From now Oni will be sitting on it. Those words were spoken to another captain, a man named Jikshur Mukitake, yet they still troubled Ichigo and almost prevented him from sleeping. Aizen's words, however, would not be the main focus of his anxieties that night. After a couple of hours, Ichigo finally managed to close his eyes and fall asleep. Moments later Ichigo opened his eyes, expecting to see the tall skyscrapers of his spiritual state. What he saw was, however, something far different. He was sitting on a large tree branch at the edge of a forest, with what could only be a massive crater in front of him. At the center of the crater was what appeared to be a single human figure. He wore what appeared to be light purple mask. Ichigo, in his confusion, almost failed to hear a voice that sounded like it was close by. Ichigo followed the voice until he found its source. 13 people, who appeared to be around his age. 12 of them were facing the 13th. One of those 12 began to speak. It was a male with long dark brown hair and white featureless eyes. You can't face Toby by yourself. Your weakened state will only mean certain death. All but 3 of the other 11 began to protest what appeared to be a decision by the 13th person to fight the mysterious man on his own. Ichigo took a look at the 13th person, another male. He had short spiky blonde hair and blue eyes. The guy wore an orange and black jumpsuit, though what made him stand out in Ichigo's eyes were the whisker marks on his cheeks and a black headband with a piece of metal sewn on it. Ichigo noticed that the metal had what appeared to be an image of a stylized leaf engraved in it. The kid sighed before he spoke. I'm sorry, guys, but this is something I have to do on my own. I promised my mom and dad that I would stop this guy, not matter what it takes. I don't want you to see what might happen. The other 12 were shocked by this revelation. Despite this, however, the brown-haired guy was about to continue his argument until another one of the figures appeared to block his path. Ichigo realized that this person was a female. She had large green eyes and, much to Ichigo's surprise, bright pink hair that resembled Yuichiru's, though it was spikier than that of the Squad 11 lieutenant. And people thought my hair was weird. Ichigo thought to himself. He decided to refocus on what was happening. Niji, I don't think there is anything more we can do to change his mind. We're just going to have to let him fight this one on his own this time. The pink-haired girl said this while attempting to hide, rather poorly, her reluctance to doing so, as if she was hoping that her statement was incorrect. At this point, another guy entered the argument. This one had long jet black hair tied in a spiky ponytail and narrow brown eyes. What are you doing, Sakura? Of all of us I was hoping that you could convince him to stop. The argument was cut short when the ground began to vibrate. The source of the shaking was none other than the blonde-haired person. Seal. He yelled while he placed his left hand flat on the ground. A few seconds later a massive cage-like structure, made out of interlocking torius, appeared and surrounded him and everything in the giant crater. With the gaps between the torius were covered by some energy barrier, the guy had effectively cut off the other 12, who appeared to be his friends, from the coming battle. The black-haired guy was enraged. Are you insane, Naruto Uzumaki? You separated us from the battle, he yelled. The awkwardness Ichigo sensed in his voice came, he realized, from the fact this guy didn't use Naruto's full name that much. That's the idea, Shikamaru, Naruto replied, receiving anxious expression the faces from the others. At this point, a guy with black hair, black eyes, and a pale skin tone turned to whisper to Sakura. After he finished what he was saying, Sakura nodded and turned to face the rest of the people. "You guys should get going," she said. It appeared that the 12 were about to protest when they and Ichigo heard someone say, "Could you guys just stop arguing already?" They faced the one who said this, a guy who looked similar to the one whispered to Sakura, though this one had longer hair and a fairer skin tone. Ichigo also noticed that he had been badly injured and could barely stand, with one wound appearing to have just missed his heart. "Sakura, Sai, and I wish to speak with Naruto alone. I'm sure you guys understand," he said, before the guy called Shikamaru nodded. Shikamaru, along with 8 of the others, finally left, though most of them clearly hesitated when doing so. The only ones who remained with Naruto were Sakura and 2 guys. The guy who spoke with Sakura was there, so Ichigo, who was watching the event unfold, concluded that he was the one called Sai. The 3 who had stayed behind tried one last time to convince Naruto to not fight the man on his own. Ichigo realized that these 3 were the ones closest to him and they cared for him a great deal. Naruto would not change his mind, however, as he was determined to face this threat. Sakura could no longer contain her emotions. Her tears affected even Ichigo, despite the fact that he didn't even know her. "Why, Naruto? Why would you throw your life away just like that? What are you trying to?" "I'm not throwing my life away, and the reason I'm fighting is to protect you guys," Naruto declared. Naruto Sai said. He, like the other 2 kids and Ichigo, was left almost speechless by their friend's words. Naruto looked at them with a confused expression before he simply grinned. Ichigo realized there was something familiar about these people, even though he didn't know who they were. Naruto's next words would make Ichigo see what it was. "You guys are my friends, and thanks to you I was able to get this far," Naruto said before his face turned serious. "I couldn't live with myself if anything happened to any of you. Besides, if I do die, I can't think of a better way to do so than to die protecting those who are important to me." At this point Ichigo realized what he had felt earlier. He saw himself and his friends in Naruto and the others. He realized that this was more than an ordinary dream. There was something significant to what he was seeing. His thoughts, however, were refocused on the conversation. "Sai, get the package on the ground there and get these 2 out of here," Naruto ordered in a rather blunt tone. Ichigo looked and, to his surprise, there was a black rectangular box on the ground in front of him with what appeared to be a seal shaped like a red spiral on it. Sai did as Naruto requested. Before they left, however, the injured guy turned back to say something to Naruto. "May I at least say one last thing?" he asked, to which Naruto nodded. "Naruto, come back alive or don't come back at all," he said. Ichigo, as well as Sakura and Sai, were stunned by what the guy said. Naruto simply looked on before he gave a nice guy pose to his friends. "No sweat, Sasuke. I'll come back. I promise," he said, with a massive grin on his face. Unlike some other people Ichigo had encountered, however, Jin primarily, his smile was sincere and comforting. Sasuke gave a light smile before turning to Sakura and Sai. "We have to go," Sasuke said, to which the other 2 simply nodded before disappearing in a cloud of smoke. Naruto then turned to the direction of his opponent. As Naruto moved forward, Ichigo realized that the world around him was turning into white void. He tried to call out to Naruto to ask what was going on. His voice, however, did not reach the young ninja. As the world around him finally disappeared, he could still hear what was to happen. "I'm sorry guys, but my road ends here." It was Naruto's voice, though it was filled with sadness. A few seconds later, Ichigo heard Naruto's voice again. "Hail Beast Rasengan!" he roared. Ichigo was clearly confused by this. "What is that? Aikido?" He thought seconds before he heard an explosion. He then became enveloped in flash of light just as he heard Sakura's voice. "Naruto!" she shrieked. At that moment, Ichigo opened his and sat up. He realized that he was back in his room. He was breathing heavily and, to his shock, sweating profusely. He immediately got up and, using his substitute Soul Reaper badge for the first time, turned to his Soul Reaper form and went to see Kisuke Urahara in order to find out what he had just witnessed. Urahara shop, Karakura town, human realm. Current time. "What do you mean that I have to wait for a week to begin my training?" Naruto yelled right into the face of the owner of the small shop. The man's gray eyes had a laid-back look in them that masked his irritation perfectly. Ichigo was also rather surprised and annoyed by this delay. "Why do we have to wait so long? It's not like me and my friends don't have anywhere else we need to be, Kisuke." At Kisuke's request, Ichigo and Rukia brought their friends Orihime, Uri Rashida and Yasutora Sato, who also goes by the name Chad, to his shop in order to explain to them what was going on and to meet the young ninja. In addition, Hitsugaya, along with his lieutenant, Ranjiku Matsumoto, Byakuya's lieutenant, Renji Abarai, and 2 officers from Kenpachi's division, Ikaku Madaram and Yumichika Asagawa, returned from the Soul Society after learning that Ichigo and his team had already found Naruto. They were in Karakura town as part of the advance team sent by the Soul Society to repel Aizen's Arankar army, but went with Ichigo and Rukia to the Soul Society after the substitute Soul Reaper foresaw Naruto's arrival. As per Yamamoto's instructions, however, they weren't informed of this until after Ichigo and his search team found the blonde-haired ninja. If must know, young Naruto, it will take a week to complete the preparations for your training. In the meantime, you'll be getting a Gigai so that you stay with Ichigo and the others, Kisuke replied rather nonchalantly. Naruto remembered that Rukia mentioned what Gigace when we're back at the Sirte. But before we do that, we have to deal with Kurama. That came from a woman who just entered the underground training area. She had a slender figure, dark skin, and long purple hair tied into a ponytail. She held an unusual device in her hand. It was shaped like a hexagon and was red in color. You managed to find it, Yoruchi. Kisuke exclaimed in an almost comical manner. His reaction was the complete opposite of Naruto's, who took Yoruchi's statement rather poorly. Deal with Kurama? What are talking about? He asked with suspicion. With the memories of the Akatsuki still fresh in his mind, he was still concerned these people simply wanted to use him like the Akatsuki had tried to do. Yoruchi knew what he was thinking and decided to clarify what she said. Don't worry, Naruto. We're not trying to take Kurama from you. For your training, however, we have to she made, in Naruto's eyes, and how I'm going to explain this without making him freak out type of expression. You have to what? Naruto asked. He was still clearly suspicious of her intentions. Yoruchi sighed before she made a response. We have to separate you and Kurama physically. Your Soul Reaper powers won't surface if Kurama is inside of you during your training. The seal keeping him inside of won't be broken, however. It will only be altered, so you'll both still be connected. Naruto was not convinced and was about to argue with the former 2nd Division captain when he heard Kurama. It's alright, Naruto. We can trust her, he said. Naruto's jaw dropped in pure shock. This is something that Naruto wouldn't have expected from any of the tailed beasts, especially the usually cynical Kurama. Are you sure, Kurama? Naruto asked with obvious shock. Kurama calmly nodded. I've met her before and, unlike so many others in our world, she was someone with whom I've had good relations with. I'm surprised that she would be in a place like this, however. Kurama had, like Naruto, never been to the world of the living or the Soul Society before. He did, however, recognize a few of the individual Soul Reapers they had encountered. As with much of his knowledge, however, Kurama decided to keep the extent of his encounters with the Soul Reapers to himself. Naruto wasn't as sure Kurama was, but he decided to trust his judgment. He already considered Kurama to be his comrade and, as such, he should have faith in him. If Kurama is willing to trust you, then I'll allow it. Try anything, however, and you'll regret it. Yoruchi simply gave a smirk as she placed a mysterious device on the location of the seal that kept Kurama within Naruto. At this point Kisuke decided to explain to Ichigo and his friends the story of the tailed beasts. At the end of the explanation, many of the people in the room weren't convinced that Kurama was worth the time it took to separate him from Naruto. How tough can they be? Ichigo asked. He was as clueless as he could ever be. More than you can ever imagine, Ichigo Kurosaki, Toshiro said. This got the captain of the 10th Division quite a few stares. Uryu was the first to respond. You know about these tailed beasts? The young Quincy asked. As a captain of the Gate 13, I'm required to know about them. As for you, Kurosaki, I'll explain to you in a way you can understand. The tailed beasts, especially Kurama, are as strong as, if not stronger than, any of the Gate 13 captains. The tailed beasts are also rather protective of their respective Jinchuriki, which is something that may interfere with Naruto's training, he said in a rather serious tone. Ichigo was understandably shocked by this revelation. That fact that there were beings besides the vast lords that could match, and possibly surpass, the captains was rather unsettling. Kisuke interrupted the conversation. Holding a paper fan up to his face, he turned to Yoruchi. It's time, Yoruchi, he said. Yoruchi then placed her palm on the gadget. The gadget soon turned black before it suddenly began to glow. Ichigo and others were in shock as a beam of energy, presumably chakra, came out of the gadget and hit the floor a few dozen yards away. Ichigo and friends. Without any further delay, I introduce you to Kurama, otherwise known as the Nine-Tailed Fox, Kisuke said as Ichigo and his friends turned their attention to the location where the chakra beam exploded. They immediately noticed a silhouette appearing within the massive dust clouds that had formed. As the clouds finally cleared, they couldn't believe what they were seeing. Standing before Ichigo and the others was a fox, though one that was larger than even the Jillians. He had red-orange fur, red eyes, the upper body structure of a human, and, true to its moniker, 9 massive tails. He looked down at the group of people before as Naruto waved up at him. Are you alright, Kurama? He asked the giant creature. Everyone else in the training area, except Kisuke, Yoruchi, and Toshiro, was looking at Kurama as if they were seeing a really scary horror movie. Kurama simply nodded and turned to Yoruchi. "It's been a long time, Yoruchi," he said. Ichigo and his friend's jaws dropped in pure shock. They didn't know which was more shocking. The fact that this creature could talk or the fact that he knew Yoruchi. "Likewise, Kurama," she replied nonchalantly. She turned to Ichigo, who was looking back and forth between Naruto and Kurama. "Don't tell me you're scared," she asked as if she was teasing him. "That's not it at all. I just don't get how someone like him," Ichigo as he pointed his finger. First at Kurama, then at Naruto. "Is sealed into someone like him." He was referring to the obvious fact that Kurama was far larger than his apparent host. He could understand if the tailed beast was human-sized, but this was just unreal. Chad also had the same sentiment. "Ichigo has a point. How is something like this even possible?" he asked. Toshiro interrupted their questioning. "To explain that would take time that we don't have, Ichigo," he said. While Ichigo wished to press further on the issue, he decided against it as the captain had made a very good point. "Very well, then. Unless you guys have any further questions, you're all free to go," Kisuke stated. "Wait a minute, Urahara. We still have to figure out where Naruto will be staying," Ichigo said. "He's staying here with me in the shop along with Kurama. I don't think he intends to leave us alone with Kurama and he obviously can't come out," Kisuke responded. As everyone else headed back to their homes, Rukia noticed that Orihime was looking back at the shop. "Is something wrong, Orihime?" she asked. "Oh, I'm fine, Rukia. It's just, well, Naruto's spiritual pressure is almost the same as that of Ichigo's," Orihime said, to which Rukia smiled. "I guess we shouldn't be surprised. They're almost exactly the same in so many ways," she said, though she still hoped that Naruto would be more mature than her friend. 1 week later. Rukia's prayers were, much to everyone's dismay, unanswered. Naruto was, if anything, even harder to deal with than Ichigo. They had to keep either Toshiro or Ichigo near him at all times just to prevent him from causing any trouble, whether it was pulling pranks or simply getting overly curious about some of the technologies that he saw. To make things more complicated, the restraints placed on the abilities of the Soul Reapers when they were inside Gigace did not affect Naruto's ability to use his jutsus, which normal humans could see, so they had to be extra cautious when they were fighting hollows. Despite the difficulties in dealing with him, however, Ichigo and the others could see why he was the reincarnate of the sage. Despite being simple, short-tempered, and mischievous to no end, he was also an individual who is honest, warm, kind, and very determined. This was all the more surprising to them after Naruto told about his life in the chakra realm. As everyone entered the training grounds under Urahara's shop to begin the young ninja's training, Ichigo was becoming more and more anxious about what was to unfold, even if he didn't show it. Once everyone arrived, Kisuke stood in front of them, holding with his cane. No one had noticed that part of the training grounds had been placed behind some sort of barrier. What was more amazing was that everyone, minus those who stayed the shop during the week, also failed to notice that both Yoruchi and Kurama were not present. "Good morning, everyone. How are you all feeling?" Kisuke asked everyone, knowing how they would respond. He had sent the message for everyone to gather at his shop an hour ago, at 5 a.m. "How do you think we feel?" groaned Renji, who was particularly annoyed by this early whack-cube. Ignoring everyone's complaints, Kisuke focused on the task at hand. "Everything is now ready. Please step forward, Naruto," he said. The young Reaper in training, who was sitting next to Ichigo, stood up, stretched his back, and stood before Kisuke. The former 12th Division captain had already informed Naruto of the risks of the particular method they were going to use to help him obtain his Soul Reaper abilities and had asked the young ninja if he's sure that he was willing to accept those risks. "I told you already that I'm not going to back down, Mr. Urahara. If taking these risks will help me go back to my friends back home, then do your worst," Naruto said with clear conviction. Kisuke simply smiled as he raised his cane with the base of the shaft pointing at Naruto. The young ninja noticed that the base bore a skull and flame symbol. He pressed the symbol to Naruto's forehead, separating the boy's soul from the Gigai that Kisuke had provided him and knocking the ninja to the ground. As Naruto stood up, clearly irritated by Urahara, everyone took notice at a chain that appeared on Naruto's chest linking him to the temporary body. "It actually worked as I had intended," Kisuke thought to himself while looking at the Gigai. This Gigai, as he had explained to Naruto and the others a week ago, was a prototype version of the one he gave to Rukia when she gave Ichigo her powers. Unlike that version, however, this Gigai would transform him into a human without draining his spiritual pressure. The Gigai was also different in one other respect. While the Gigai Rukia had would turn her into a human over a long period of time, Kisuke said so that the user wouldn't notice, the one Naruto was using had turned him back into a human in less than a week. That was why Naruto now had a chain of fate connecting him to his Gigai body. Pushing these thoughts aside, Kisuke returned his attention to the young shinobi. "Alright, young Naruto, your fur," Kisuke said before he was interrupted by a fist to his face from the young man. As Kisuke got up, slightly in pain, he finally noticed the irritation etched into Naruto's face. He also noticed that Naruto had no difficulties breathing or moving whatsoever when he should have been gasping for air. Kisuke, never one to be surprised, was clearly at a loss for words. How is he able to breathe and move so easily? Is he already able to raise his spiritual energy? Kisuke thought to himself. Why did you smack me so hard, damn it? Naruto roared, waking everyone else there in the process. Kisuke just stood there, looking at the young shinobi. I guess that answers the question. This at least that makes our job a hell of a lot easier, Kisuke thought to himself before he spoke to Naruto. So I could separate you from your body, as it requires quite a bit of force. Now before you wake up all of Karakura town, may I at least one thing? Kisuke asked. And what might that be? Naruto asked as he was still seething. Kisuke pulled out his little paper fan. Congratulations, young Naruto. You passed the first lesson before it even began. He said comically jolly manner. Huh? Naruto blurted out. Urahara shop, Karakura town, human realm. Current time. Recap. Congratulations, young Naruto. You passed the first lesson before it even began. Kisuke said in a comically jolly manner. Huh? Naruto blurted out. After a few seconds Naruto finally composed himself. Are you serious? He asked the eccentric ex-captain. Of course I'm serious. The first lesson was to learn how to raise your own spiritual energy. When Ichigo was trying to gain, or regain to be more precise, his Soul Reaper powers he wasn't able to move or breathe properly for quite some time, which is supposed to be the case for everyone when they become pluses. Your physical stamina is beyond that of anything I've ever witnessed, however, as you were able to raise your spiritual energy the moment you left your body. Kisuke explained to the young ninja. Naruto gave a wide mischievous smile at this. I knew I was more awesome than Ichigo, Naruto said in a mischievous tone, causing a giant vein to poke out of Ichigo's forehead. Shut up, Naruto, he retorted, knowing that Naruto was just trying to get under his skin, again. Despite his irritation, however, he was glad that Naruto was able to pass the first lesson. Ichigo was still trying to hide it from his friends, but they could already tell that his relationship with Naruto was already less of a teacher and student and more of a rival-friend type of bond. This newly formed friendship, which he had made with the others as well, was the reason that they were all anxious, to varying degrees, about the next lesson. Anyways, I suggest that we celebrate this by immediately going to the second lesson, Kisuke declared, and before the blonde-haired ninja could even react to this, a giant axe severed Naruto's chain of fate, separating him from his body. He turned to face the weapon's wielder, a tall, muscular, lightly tan-skinned man with cornrowed hair and a large handlebar mustache, which was connected to his long sideburns. The man, from what Naruto learned during his time at Urahara's shop, was named Tessai. Before Naruto could question what was going on, he suddenly fell to the ground and was unable to get up as Tessai had him pinned to the ground. What the hell, Tessai? Naruto asked in pure confusion and clear pain, at which point Kisuke decided to explain the situation to Naruto. This is the shattered shaft lesson that I warned you about a few days back, Kisuke said. After a few seconds, Naruto's eyes widened at the meaning of what Kisuke mentioned. So this is lesson where I become a hollow if I fail? Naruto asked, to which Kisuke confirmed. You don't have much time now, so I'll give a quick explanation of the lesson itself. Now that your chain of fate is severed, the remaining links of your chains will go through something called encroachment, which is just a fancy way of saying that the links be destroyed, one by one. Once encroachment ends, a hole will form in your chest and you'll become a hollow. At that point we'll have to kill you, Kisuke explained. Naruto's face suddenly gained an expression of pure terror. Then how the hell am I supposed to stow? Naruto said before a voice interrupted him. There's only one way to prevent yourself from becoming a hollow. Naruto turned his head and was shocked to find that it was Ichigo who was the one who was talking. And that is to become a Soul Reaper, Ichigo said. Kisuke soon took control of the conversation again. That is the purpose of this lesson. In order to proceed you need to claim your Soul Reaper powers. Anyways, it's time to begin. Kisuke then pointed his hand forward. Go, he said as if it were a command. As if on cue a large cylindrical hole formed directly under Naruto and Tessai. Naruto screamed loud enough to force Kisuke and Ichigo to cover their ears until they heard a loud thud from Naruto landing at the body of the shaft. Both men then looked into the shaft to see that Tessai was about to perform a Kido. Bakudo number 99, part 1. Kin, Tessai exclaimed. As Naruto was about to get Tessai off of him, his arms were suddenly bound behind his back with spiritual fabric and iron shafts. Naruto attempted to break through the bindings, but to no avail, as the binding held fast. Why are you guys doing this? Naruto asked as he got to his feet. As he tried to pull himself together, he watched in horror as the link of the chain farthest from his chest began forming multiple sets of mouths that began gnashing at the link. Before Naruto could step on the link, which he hoped would slow the process, he heard Ichigo say, "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Naruto looked and saw the substitute Soul Reaper and Kisuke standing at the top of the shaft. "If you or anyone else tried to stop it, the chain will simply bite back," Ichigo said bluntly. "Then what I am supposed to do, for Kami's sake?" Naruto roared at him. "You got to climb out of the shaft before the encroachment ends," Ichigo said with his usual expression etched into his face. "And remember how much time you have," he said. Naruto had already been told that this lesson had a 72-hour time limit. Ichigo and Kisuke walked away from the shaft, ignoring Naruto's rant about him kicking both their sorry asses when he got out of there. "You'll think he will succeed?" Kisuke asked the orange-haired Soul Reaper. Ichigo scowled at him before he answered. "Of course he will. Stop underestimating my student, Kisuke," Ichigo roared at the former Soul Reaper captain, not wanting his student to appear weak in front of the others. They now sat down as they waited for Naruto to either become a Soul Reaper or a Hollow. 20 hours later. Which was too much for the impatient Ichigo to do. He was not the type to wait around idly, so he passed the time the only way he could think of. Having a sparring match with Ikaku, then Chad, and now Renji. As he attempts to hit Ichigo with the Shikai of his Zanpakuto, Renji decides to have some small talk with Naruto's mentor. "I still don't understand how something the size of Kurama can be sealed within a person," Renji said as Ichigo easily dodged another series of attacks from Zabumaru. "Yeah, I actually thought he was going to be the size of normal fox. I never imagined that he would be that huge," Ichigo said, looking around the training grounds. His eyes suddenly widened as if he had realized something important. "And speaking of Kurama, where is he? And where's Yuruchi for that matter?" Ichigo asked, gaining a shocked look from the 6th Division lieutenant. "You're joking? You mean you haven't noticed that a giant fox with 9 tails and power greater than any of the captains was not around, even though you've been here for almost a day already?" Renji asked with some irritation. The others had made comments about Kurama's absence and had assumed Ichigo was too focused on Naruto to even bother mentioning it. Before Ichigo could reply, however, a familiar voice interrupted their conversation. "Kurama was here the whole time, Renji. You just couldn't see him until now." Ichigo and everyone else, minus Kisuke, who was keeping his eyes on the shaft, Ranjiku, and Yumichika, who were either dealing with hollows or simply enjoying their time in the human world, turned to the direction of the voice and saw Yuruchi standing next someone they had never seen before. He was a young man, maybe a couple of years older than Naruto, and appeared to be a few inches taller than Ichigo, and had a lean build. He had shaggy black hair that went just below the shoulders, blue eyes, and a calm, serene expression. He was wearing a tattered grey duster with an upturned collar, no sleeves, and 9 red magatamas arranged in circular pattern on the back. Underneath this duster the man wore a white shirt, black pants, grey shinobi sandals, and a red sash. He also had what appeared to be a sheathed katana with a round tsuba and a red hilt. The sheath was attached to the red sash. The people in the front of them may not have recognized him by appearance, but the energy they sensed within him gave his identity away. "Kurama, is that you?" Rukia asked. The man simply smiled as everyone looked at him in shock. "You guys already figured that out, huh? At least that makes explaining things a little easier," the tailed beast said in an easygoing voice that was completely unrecognizable from the crude demonic roar of a voice that everyone remembered from last week. Yesterday for Renji and the people who worked in Urahara's shop. Ichigo was, understandably, shocked by this. "Wait a minute, Yuruchi," Ichigo stammered, "if you said that Kurama's true form was what we saw last week, then why is he?" Ichigo said before he was interrupted by Naruto, who was suddenly swearing at something. "What the hell are these expletive things? Get them off of me. I'm already expletive tied up as it is," he roared. This got everyone's attention since Naruto had been rather quiet for the past 12 hours and, more importantly, the volume of the Naruto screams indicated that he was no longer at that bottom of the shaft. Everyone ran towards the shaft where Kisuke was already looking at the edge. When everyone got to the edge they cautiously looked down. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Somehow, Naruto was halfway up the shaft even with the Kido that Tessai used still active. He was now tied up further, however, by 6 chains that appeared to have come out of the walls of the shaft and were wrapped around the young ninja. He is now suspended in the middle of the shaft, struggling to break free from these new bindings while cursing his predicament. Everyone just stared at the scene in disbelief. Yuruchi, Tessai, Kisuke and Ichigo were especially taken aback by the sight. "I never thought I'd never see the day," Kisuke said, getting a bunch of confused stares from everyone including Naruto, who was now too constricted by the chains to even move a muscle. Kisuke raised his eyebrows, as if he was not expecting their reaction. A few moments passed before his eyes widened as if he realized something. "Oh, that's right. Ichigo never got this far, did he?" Kisuke asked rhetorically. He decided to give a quick explanation. "This is the second stage of the shattered shaft. Naruto will, as soon as I say the command, enter his spiritual state and attempt to gain his powers. This is how one is supposed to obtain their abilities during this lesson. Ichigo never got to this point because he was at the bottom the whole time when he was in there, he explained. He turned his attention to Naruto, who looked like he was going to rip him apart. Before I say the command, you should know that you are still going through the encroachment, so you should be quick about it. You've got 52 hours, Kisuke said nonchalantly. Before Naruto could go off on a tirade, Kisuke slammed his cane into the ground and yelled, "Enter." As soon as he did, a white light enveloped Naruto and the chains. Naruto yelled at Kisuke, saying that he would regret tying him up like some beast, only to realize that he was already surrounded by the blinding flash. After what felt like an eternity, Naruto opened his eyes and saw a clear blue sky in front of him and felt a weird sensation. It was like he was lying on something soft and a little cold. He sat up and noticed that he was in a clearing in the middle of a tranquil snow-covered forest. As he stood up, he felt a strong gust of wind come from behind. He turned around and let jaw drop in awe at what he was seeing. The clearing he was standing in was on the edge of appeared to be Hokage Mountain, or at least a version of it that was twice as big as the real one. This place was also different from his home in one other major aspect. The forest on top of the mountain also extended down to the base where Konoha should be and appeared to continue endlessly. Naruto also noticed that there were quite a few birds, primarily hawks and owls, which Naruto found to be very strange. If this was the spiritual state that the asshole Kisuke had talked about, he assumed that anything alive in here would have been either foxes or toads. He tried to think of how he would retrieve his powers until he heard a somewhat familiar voice. "You've arrived here sooner than I expected. Can't say I'm surprised, though," the voice said. It was the female voice that Naruto kept hearing from time to time and the one that warned him that Cypher was going to attack. He turned around to finally face the source of the voice. What he saw amazed him. It was a young woman, about the age of his mother, who had a slender figure, fair skin and long hair that was also similar to his mother's, except that it was white in color and instead of a black hair clip, she had a snowdrop pinned to her hair. Her eyes were one of her most distinguishing characteristic, with bluer eyes and pupils that resembled a cross that looked the Sage Mode initial Jinchuriki form fusion that Naruto had used when he first encountered Nagato and Konan, yellow pigmentation around both eyes, and had a very piercing gaze. The other, and more noticeable, characteristic that made her unusual were the large white wings that kept her off the ground. She was wearing a bright blue kimono with sleeves that went down to just above her wrists, a yellow sleeveless haori, yellow shinobi sandals, and an orange sash around her waist. There was a slight bulge underneath the right sleeve of her kimono that Naruto could only assume was a hidden kunai mechanism. Naruto simply looked on in shock as the mysterious women began to speak. "Don't tell me that you haven't sensed my presence already?" she asked a young ninja, at which point Naruto regained his focus. "That's not it at all. I've already heard your voice. I just don't know who you are," Naruto replied. He did know about the voice and that she must be his Zanpakuto, but that's where his familiarity ended. The woman sighed at this reply. "My name is," she started to explain. Naruto, however, was unable to hear the rest of her sentence due to sudden and strong gusts of wind. "I can't hear you," he replied, to which the woman shook her head. Naruto got the strange feeling that she had expected this to happen. "I guess you really will have to find your Soul Reaper powers first," she said. Before Naruto could question her on that, she decided to elaborate on her point. "Your Soul Reaper powers are located somewhere in this world, and now that this world will go up in flames, it is the perfect time to find that power. If you cannot it before this is fully burned to the ground, you will turn into a hollow." Naruto was now very confused. "Go up in flames? Burn to the ground? What do you mean?" Naruto began asking until he noticed that the flocks of birds perched on the trees began to fly away, as if they were trying to get away from something. Naruto then noticed that a few of the trees began to spontaneously burst into large white flames. Naruto's confusion turned into terror as the other trees began burst into similar flames in rapid succession until, in a space of 30 seconds, the entire forest was engulfed in flames. The winged woman decided to clarify further what he should be doing. "Instead of standing around, gaping at the flames, you should be trying to find your powers. One of these burning trees contains your Soul Reaper powers. You need to find it before the flames destroy this world." Naruto was growing frustrated with this woman. How the hell was he going to find one particular tree when all these trees looked the same, flames included? As considered fighting her to get a straight answer, something caught his eye. Many of the embers that flames emitted were now floating in the air. Naruto's eyes widened as he saw a few red embers mixed in with the ones. "These are like the strings that Uryu and Ichigo used to find me all the time," Naruto thought to himself. Whenever tried to cause some mischief during the past week, those two would always track him down, even when tried to suppress his powers. Realizing that these embers were simply another version of those strings, he began to go in the direction of the red embers which, sure enough, led him to their source. The embers came from a tree stump in another clearing within the forest. As Naruto had expected, the flames emitted from it were red instead of the white flames emitted from the full trees around it. Naruto looked into the flames and was further surprised by what he saw inside the flames. It looked like the tri-pronged kunai his dad was known for using, except that this one had no markings on the handle. The main prong of the kunai was wedged within the stump and surrounded by the red flames. Naruto realized that this was the power that the woman was referring to. Naruto, trying to play it safe, tried to figure out how to get the blade out of the flames when the woman, who had followed him, made her presence known. "What are you waiting for, an invitation? Pull it out." Naruto looked at her as if she was clinically insane. "Are you crazy? That blade is on fire. Fire. I can't just put my hand in there." At this the woman, who had a calm expression up until that point, scowled at him and began to lecture him. "Is this the Naruto that defeated pain? Is this the Naruto that saved Sasuke when everyone else thought he was beyond redemption? Is this the same Naruto that was willing to sacrifice himself to defeat Tobi? Why are you so afraid of something so trivial like this? This isn't who you are, Naruto Uzumaki. The real you would have thrown his hand in those flames, completely oblivious to the danger. Have you let yourself get so caught up in your fears that you've lost yourself in this moment, or have you simply forgotten the reason why you're here, trying to become a Soul Reaper, in the first place?" Naruto was left speechless by this tirade and was unable to respond until, with another strong gust of wind, a small bundle fell out of the front pockets of his pants. He picked it up, looked at its contents. A copy of the group photo of him and the original Team 7, and a copy of the novel written by his late master Jiraiya, Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi. As Naruto stared at these items, he realized what the woman was trying to tell him. "Why am I scared?" Naruto thought to himself as the memories of his friends back in his world and the bonds he had already made in this world raced through his mind. After a few minutes of silence, minus the crackling of the flames the woman's scowl disappeared as she attempted to talk some sense into him. "Let me ask you something, Naruto. What are Ichigo and the others going to see once you get out of the shaft? Are they going to see someone who gave in to his doubts and turned into a hollow as a result? Or are they going to see a Soul Reaper, unwavering in his resolve and ready for whatever comes his way? I think they should see a Soul Reaper come out of the shaft. What do you think?" At this Naruto simply smirked. "I think they should see a Soul Reaper as well," he said. "Then stick your hand in those flames and pull that blade out of there," the woman said. "Right," Naruto replied. As he finally stuck both his hands into the flames, he was amazed that he didn't feel anything out of the ordinary when he should have been in very intense pain. After a few minutes of attempting, unsuccessfully, to pull the blade out of the stump, Naruto, using all the physical strength he could muster into one attempt, finally got the blade free. As Naruto sat down on the ground, taking a good look at his Zanpakuto, he noticed that the fires around him were abruptly ending as the forest returned to its previous state. The woman now looked at him again. This time, however, she smiled at him. "I can now answer your first question. My name is Kenja, another word for sage in Japanese." Naruto simply smiled back. "Kenja, is it? Makes sense to me. And thank you. I promise you that that won't happen to me again," Naruto said. "Are you sure you can't see going on in his mind, Kurama?" Ichigo asked the tailed beast. "I already told you this 5 times. Until Naruto gains his Soul Reaper powers, the gadget that Uruchi used to separate us prevents me from communicating with him within his mind and vice versa. That's also why he hasn't been able to use my chakra for the past week," Kurama said, maintaining his calm demeanor in spite of Ichigo's behavior. Since he and Naruto were so much alike, however, dealing with Ichigo was not that difficult for him. "Maybe so, Kurama, but shouldn't you at least try to see what's going on before being so sure of that?" Ranjiku asked him, to which he sighed in frustration. She and Yumichika had returned soon after Naruto began the second stage. "I've been trying the whole time Naruto has been down there. How else would I know that it's not possible yet?" Kurama said. He turned his attention to Kisuke, hoping that the barrage of repetitive questions would end soon. "How long has he been in there?" Kurama asked him. "He's been in this state for about 16 hours, so he's been in the shaft for about 36 hours as of now," Kisuke answered while he still focused his gaze on Naruto, still amazed at this young man's strength. Kurama nodded in understanding. Yumichika decided to ask Kurama something that had been biting at his curiosity ever since he had first seen Kurama's human form. "Kurama, do you mind if I ask you something?" he asked. "Be my guest," Kurama said in reply. "You said earlier that the whisker marks on Naruto's cheeks were the result of your chakra's influence on him when he was born. If that's true, then how come you don't have those marks?" Yumichika asked. As a man obsessed with appearances, he had noted the lack of marks on Kurama a while back. Kurama raised an eyebrow at this question. That's an unusual question to ask at this time. Then again, I can see why you would ask about that, Kurama said before he answered. The reason I don't have the marks is Kurama began to explain before he felt a strange sensation in his abdomen. He lifted the bottom half of his see what was going on. He smirked at what he saw. On his abdomen an image of the Torii seal that Naruto used to restrain Kurama after gaining the 9-tailed chakra mode, a Magatama bead, which connected him and Naruto was imprinted on him. Since he had gained his human form the circle part was completely black. When he first revealed this to Ichigo and the others, Yoruichi had to explain the nature of the sealing jutsu because they initially thought that he had been hollow-feet. The circle was now, however, changing before everyone's eyes from a black void into a red spiral pattern. Kurama stood in place, motionless, for a few minutes before he flashed a smile. It was like he just realized what had happened. "We should probably back away from the shaft now," he said to everyone in the room. Ichigo and the others didn't understand what he meant until a sudden surge of spiritual pressure began emanating from the shaft. Anyone who wasn't standing up at the time immediately got on their feet now. Ikaku turned to Kurama, talking with his usual maniacal grin etched onto his face. "I'm guessing that Naruto finally succeeded?" he asked the tailed beast, to which he nodded. "I was finally able to communicate with him and his Zanpakuto," Kurama replied before reiterating his previous warning. "We should back away from the shaft." Everyone did as he suggested, not wanting to get caught in the explosion that was going to occur. Just as Kurama and the others got 100 between them and the shaft, a massive column of orange spiritual pressure burst from the shaft. If anyone had been within 80 feet of the blast they would have been badly, maybe even critically, injured. As the dust clouds from the explosion settled, Kisuke shuddered at what would have happened to his friend Tessai. If he hadn't gotten out of the shaft after Naruto began the second stage of the shattered shaft, he would surely have been killed in the blast. Pushing that thought out of he turned his attention to the task at hand. He decided to call out to Naruto. "Naruto Uzumaki, are you still alive?" he asked in an almost mocking tone as everyone else, minus Kurama, were still reeling from witnessing the massive explosion. As if in response to Kisuke's question, his hat suddenly burst into hundreds of tiny pieces. Before Kisuke could respond to his hat's murder, the culprit made himself known with a very strong and well-timed kick to Kisuke's face, which sent him flying a few dozen yards. He managed to get up a few minutes later after being knocked unconscious by the kick. As he checked to make sure that he hadn't broken anything, he heard Naruto's voice. "I wanted to do that ever since you put me in that damn hole, Kisuke," he said with a mixture of irritation and satisfaction in his voice. Kisuke turned around to see what the new Soul Reaper looked like. Naruto was now wearing the black shahakusho of a Soul Reaper, though his version was noticeably different from the standard version. The sleeves of his kozode were slightly more form-fitting and extended to just above the wrists, with a slight bulge protruding from underneath the right sleeve. He still wore his black shinobi sandals, as opposed to the traditional wooden sandals, and both his undergarments and the strap around his waist were orange instead of white. He also wore a strap around his chest that consisted of red, yellow, and orange Magatama beads that were lined up with each other vertically. He still wore his black shinobi forehead protector, in spite of the many times that thing should been destroyed. In addition to the change in wardrobe, he was now wielding a tri-pronged kunai knife that he held in his hand, which was clearly his Zanpakuto based on the ridiculously immense spiritual pressure they could feel emanating from it. The kunai had a small rope attached to that appeared to connect the blade to whatever was hidden in his sleeve. He was now also as tall as Ichigo and his hair now reached shoulder length. Kisuke decided to speak, hoping that Naruto wouldn't try to strike him again. "How do you feel, young Naruto?" he asked him rather calmly. "After what happened down there?" "Not bad, really. However, if you ever try that on me again, Kisuke, and I'll make you wish that I had turned into a hollow," he replied, to which Kisuke nodded. Kisuke then gave a clear explanation of the third lesson, which was basically meant to help the person who obtained their Soul Reaper powers get adjusted to using said powers. "Well, Naruto, why don't we begin the third lesson now?" he asked, to which Naruto smirked. "If it involves me fighting you then bring it on," Naruto said, to which Kisuke simply pulled out his paper fan and held it up to his face. "I will not be fighting you. Your opponent," Kisuke replied as Ichigo approached the two of them with his Zanpakuto Zangetsu already in Bankai form, which Naruto had already seen before. Kisuke stopped his explanation as he could tell that Naruto already understood what was going to happen. Before he could say anything, however, he heard Kenja's voice. "This one's very powerful. Do you really think that you're ready to face such an opponent?" she said, though she already knew his answer. "Face him? I plan on beating him," Naruto proudly declared. After a few moments of silence, Kenja spoke to him again. "It would appear you've fully regained your resolve. There is only one thing that I have left to say," she said. When Naruto didn't say anything she assumed, correctly in this case, that he was listening. Remember this well, Naruto, if you wish to see your friends back home again, if you wish to honor the promises that you've made to your parents, sensei, and so many others, and if you wish to one day revive your dream of becoming Hokage, then keeping walking the path that you swore on your blood to follow. No matter how dire the situation or how great the odds are against you, keep moving forward and show those who dwell in the darkness the undying light that is the will of fire, because that's who Naruto is. Now call for me. She said. Naruto gladly obliged her. Ride the wind, Kenja. He roared, at which point another, though less powerful, explosion of orange spiritual pressure engulfed him. The explosion was accompanied by very strong gusts of wind. After the explosion cleared, everyone was shocked to see the change in Naruto's Zanpakuto. It was now a wooden staff as tall as its wielder with the bases covered in steel plating. The plating on both sides of the staff have the kanjis for staff and wind emblazoned on them, while both ends of the staff also have the for seal emblazoned on them. As everyone just looked in on shock, Naruto lifted the bottom half of his staff and further shocked everyone as a powerful gust of wind struck Ichigo and lacerated his left arm in at least 5 different places. I hope you're ready for a trip to your dad's clinic, Ichigo, Naruto said smugly, to which Ichigo smirked at despite his injuries. You'll be the one who needs a doctor after this, Naruto, he said as he released a massive amount of his blue-colored spiritual pressure. Naruto responded by releasing massive amounts of his orange-colored spiritual pressure, as well as both his and Kurama's chakras, which he now had access to again. They then charged at each other at full force. I'm taking you down, Ichigo. Naruto roared just before both their Zanpakutos clashed with each other, causing the powerful energies they had both released to explode. Shinobi Alliance Headquarters, SA, unspecified location northeast of Tokigakure, Shinobi World. Current time. The skies above the relocated base of the allied shinobi forces were generating a large amount of rain, matching the feelings of grief that the shinobi in the camp were experiencing. For the shinobi of Konohagakure, the feelings of loss hit them especially hard. It had been more than a week since the tragic death of Naruto Uzumaki after his battle with Tobi, and the emotional toll was still the same as it was the moment he died. Despite the feeling of emptiness that emanated across the allied forces, however, they refused to give in to those feelings as they were determined not to let Naruto's efforts be in vain. For the Fourth Shinobi World War did not end with Tobi's demise. The 5 Kages, their bodyguards, and the leader of the Land of Iron Samurai, a man named Mifune, were now in the new meeting hall, listening to the latest reports on the war effort. The captain of the intelligence division, Inoichi Yamanaka, was the one delivering the updates. Our commando unit has just sent us the intel the Akatsuki Remnant, as it was now called, left at Mountain's graveyard during their withdrawal. They are now returning to base as we speak. The commando unit's report also states that Captain Yamato has recovered from his injuries and is also returning to base, the Yamanaka clansman explained. After a few moments of awkward silence, Lenoki, the Tsuchikage, decided to ask the one question that was on everyone's mind. Have they found anything regarding Naruto's remains? He asked. Though large traces of Naruto's blood had been found at the site of his battle, his body had not been located. Many of the shinobi feared that the remnant might have somehow acquired his body and might go so far as to use him as an Edo Tensei summoning. Considering the fact that both Orochimaru and Kabuto were now, reluctantly, part of the Akatsuki remnant, the possibility was definitely real. All the information that both the commando unit found regarding Naruto Uzumaki's remains, along with report from Naruto's friends, suggests that that remnant were unsuccessful in their attempts to even find his remains. The reports also indicate that they didn't even begin looking for them until well after we had taken all of Naruto's blood as well as Tobi's remains, Inoichi responded. Most of the shinobi were just glad they didn't have to face him in battle, though the location his bodies was now something that unnerved the allied forces. At this point Gaara decided to ask another, more pressing, question. What of the whereabouts of the remnant? He asked with a voice that indicated that he was in pain. With resealing of Shukaku within him occurring only 2 days ago, his body was still readjusting to the return of the tailed beast to its place within the 5th Kazekage. There was no information regarding their current position, and the commando unit could not sense their presence. Inoichi explained. Everyone in the room was starting to get frustrated. Yugura, who was also present at this meeting alongside the 7 other non-caged Jinchuriki, decided to voice his irritation. We should have finished Madara when we had the chance, the former Mizukage grumbled. This was a sentiment shared by the other Jinchuriki. When Naruto had freed the other Biju from Tobi's control, more specifically from the Jed Masm statue where the tailed beasts were placed in after their extraction that was controlled by Tobi, they were sealed within the newly manifested Jinchuriki, as their spirits had also been freed by Naruto. Shukaku, since his previous host had been revived before that time, had been sealed within a large jar, similar to the one that Jayuki and the Gold and Silver brothers were sealed in. After Sakura had treated the revived Jinchuriki for any injuries they received, they went with Killer Bee to aid the cages, who were desperately fighting to survive their battle with undead Madara Uchiha. Despite saving the cages and inflicting serious damage to Madara, however, the reanimated Uchiha was able to escape from the allied shinobi forces' grasp. He then freed Kabuto from the grip of the Izanami before forcing him and Orochimaru to fight for him despite his weakened state. The three then rounded up Black Zetsu and the remaining White Zetsu forces, 10,000 in total, before retreating to Mountain's graveyard. The enemy vanished 4 days ago, despite the fact that the area around their last known location was a peninsula with very few places to hide. The Jinchuriki were especially ashamed of this. Naruto had sacrificed his life to save them and the shinobi world, yet they couldn't even stop the second mastermind behind the war that claimed his life from escaping. Mei Tamuri, the current Mizukage, tried to console the Jinchuriki. You couldn't have known about his contingencies, so what could you do? With the damage he sustained, it would take him no sooner than a month to recover even with the first Hokage's cells, regardless of whether he's Ito Tensei or not. We'll find him soon enough, she reasoned. As the Jinchuriki pondered their worth, Mei decided to ask Tsunade a question. Lady Hokage, how are the revived shinobi faring in their recoveries? Mei asked. Tsunade had not spoken much in the past week, except for when the situation called for it. Along with Gaara, the fifth Hokage found Naruto's death to be an unbearably bitter pill to swallow. She had also missed some of the meetings, though this was due to the fact that she was needed in the logistical support and medical division, who were overwhelmed with over 15,000 wounded shinobi, still needing treatment for minor to serious injuries since last week. The most serious cases have been dealt with, though we still have 12,000 more patients that need treatment for minor injuries. She sighs, though I'll admit we would be in worse shape if they hadn't been revived, she said. During the course of the war, the allied shinobi forces army had dropped from 80,000 to fewer than 30,000. As another testament to Naruto's heroism, however, he had used the tailed beast's chakras to utilize an unknown reanimation jutsu, which he hadn't revealed to anyone. Instead of using it in his fight with Tobi, he had the jutsu sealed in a scroll which was in the black box that Naruto had asked Sai to bring to the cages. When the scroll was opened, the jutsu was released, reviving the shinobi who had perished up until that time. Some of them, however, were still injured to varying degrees and had to be treated. The fact that the allied forces were able to relocate from their original base in the Land of Lightning in such short time was nothing short of surprising. These issues, important though they were not the primary concern of the Raikage, who goes by the alias A. He made his main concern known at this point. Hokage, has his team finished setting up their camp? He asked with a large amount of anger simmering in his voice. His contempt was not directed at Tsunade, of course, but at him. Tsunade nodded in reply. Sasuke and his team just finished. Kakashi is now briefing them on their new duties, she said, to which the Raikage sighed. I hope that we don't end up paying the price for trying to honor Naruto's last request, he grunted. As much as he didn't want to spare the Uchiha's life, he, along with the rest of the Shinobi Alliance, were just unwilling to deny Naruto's last request. And Sasuke was, along with the rest of Taka, arrested and brought before the cages, was the last one to consent to sparing them and had only done so for 2 reasons. The first one was that the cages consented to his terms for the 2-year exile period that Sasuke and his team were sentenced to. In addition to fighting for the allied shinobi forces, the members of Taka would have to go on various missions that were almost suicidal in their difficulty. The second reason behind A's mercy was found in a letter from Naruto, which was in the same box as the scroll with the sealed jutsu. The last request Naruto made was, naturally, that Sasuke's life, as well as that of his team members, be spared. In addition to the terms of Sasuke exile, out of respect for the fallen hero, and out of fear of the response from the shinobi forces, should he refuse Naruto's last wish, relented in his desire for the Uchiha's blood. Tsunade understood what A was trying to imply. Only time will tell if he turns on us. Rest assured, however, that we will do what is necessary should that happen, she replied. The cages then refocused their attention to Inoichi's reports. Shinobi forces advance camp east of Shinobi Alliance headquarters. Meanwhile, a small and secluded camp, located between the Land of the Waterfall and the Land of Sound, was like any one of the small outposts situated around the Sa, with the only distinguishing feature being the shinobi residing in it. They were the most hated people in the shinobi world right now after the members of the Remnant, with one of them garnering particular venom from the allied forces. That person was now standing in front of his new commanding officer alongside his team as the commander was giving them their orders. The officer, Kakashi Haddock, knew this young man very well as they had once, alongside Sakura Haruno and Naruto Uzumaki, been a part of Konoha's Squad 7. Those are your orders as of right now. Am I to be understood, Sasuke? Kakashi asked the young Uchiha. Yes, Sasuke replied. The orders they were referring to were rather extreme by the standards of the shinobi. Sasuke, along with his teammates Sujetsu Mizuki, Ichigo, and Karen, had 3 main missions. The first one was to observe any enemy movements that might prelude an attack on either the Shinobi forces, the nations to the east of their camp, which included the lands of sound, hot water, frost, and lighting, or the land of fire, and report on anything they find. This would be the main duty for Karen as her mind's eye of the Kagura mech makes her more than capable of observing such a large area. The second mission was for Taka to track down all those who were still marked with Orochimaru's cursed seal of heaven. When Sasuke had revealed how he had, against all common sense, revived Orochimaru, the prevention of more revivals occurring in the future was a top priority for the allied shinobi forces. The third, and stickier, mission was to locate Madara, the rest of the remnant, and their remaining forces. This was easier said than done, as even if Taka was able to locate this quarry, would they still have to return to their camp and report their location before the remnant found out that their hiding spot had been compromised. In addition, because Sasuke and his team were considered expendable by the shinobi forces, they also had to perform various other S-rank missions, all of them with almost no support. This was so the chances of survival for Taka were extremely low. Kakashi, having finished his briefing, decided that it was time to head back to the SA. When Kakashi was out of Karen's sensory range, Sasuke turned to his teammates. "I need you guys to stay here. I need to be alone for a bit," he said. All 3 nodded in understanding. As Sasuke got out of their line of sight, Sujetsu turned his attention to Karen. "Aren't you going to stalk him anyways?" He chided, expecting her to actually do so. He was surprised by her actual response. "So he could try to kill me again? I told you already that I'm done with Sasuke. I'm here because I had no say in the matter," she replied very angrily before sitting on her began using the mech. Sujetsu decided to leave her alone so as not to provoke her. He decided to speak with Jugo. "Sasuke's been rather moody lately, hasn't he?" he asked Jugo, to which he nodded. "Considering his relationship with that Naruto character as well as what happened last week, I'm just relieved that he's handling it as he is now. It's as if he sees himself as the one responsible for his death," he said. His words were certainly accurate to the letter. Sasuke, after swearing to kill Naruto himself only a few weeks prior, was now, in the ultimate irony, the one person burdening himself with greatest amount of guilt over his friend's death, even though he hadn't done the deed personally. He had been so focused on purifying his clan that he failed to realize that the true mastermind behind its destruction was the man aiding him in his efforts to destroy Konoha until it was too late. As he stood in front of a small lake 20 yards from the camp, Sasuke cursed himself as he looked at his own reflection. "How could I have been so blinded to the truth? How could have been so damn weak? Now because of me Naruto's dead. I only ended up shaming my brother and my clan in the end," he thought as memories of his friend raced through his mind, as well as Kurama's warning to him when they had crossed paths. "You had better not kill Naruto, as you will only end up regretting it," he had warned him. "I should have taken that damn Biju's warning to heart," the Uchiha thought to himself. After a few minutes of looking blankly at his reflection, Sasuke turned his attention to the edge of a large forest to his right. "If you've come to avenge Naruto's death, I have no intention of stopping you, Shikamaru," he said with an emotionless tone as the Nara clansmen appeared from the shadows. "As much as some of us from the Hidden Leaf would have taken you up on that offer, just thinking of what Naruto would do to me in the afterlife is enough for me to pass. Besides, the way some of us see it, you took a blow meant to Naruto, and you were not the one that fought Naruto to the death, so I have no reason to kill you as far as revenge is concerned," he said, getting a raised eyebrow from Sasuke. "Why are you here, then? Last time I heard you're the proxy commander for Gaara's division, so don't you have somewhere you have to be?" Sasuke pointed out. "Sakura and the others needed to speak with you. We won't be going far, so just follow me," Shikamaru replied, motioning for Sasuke to follow him. After a few minutes they both arrived at a clearing 90 yards away from Sasuke's camp. The Uchiha soon stood before the Sakura, Sai, and the rest of the Konoha 11. Sasuke sighed. "I take it you guys want something from me?" he asked. Kiba was the first to respond. "Shikamaru told us that you're supposed to track down Madara. Is it true?" he asked. Sasuke, though somewhat taken aback by this, nodded in reply. "I'm guessing that you all are planning to fight him?" he asked. "That's right." It was Sakura who had replied, surprising Sasuke. "I'm surprised the cages would allow you to go through with this," Sasuke stated. "Milady and the others don't know that we're planning to do this, Sasuke. This is something we plan to do on our own accord," Sakura replied. While Sasuke looked at her with a bit of surprise evident in his expression, Neji decided to clarify what they wanted from him. "Anyways, we're simply asking you to keep looking for him. If you do track him down, however, we want you to inform us and to keep it a secret from the higher-ups. Simply send the message to Shikamaru through one of your hawk summonings and we'll take it from there," the Hyuga said. Sasuke looked at each of the shinobi before he replied. I'll agree to it if you guys allow me to join you, Sasuke said. Everyone's eyes widened at this request. Sai was the first to voice his surprise. Are you sure you want to do that? Sasuke thought back to his memories of Naruto before he replied. Because of my actions Naruto is gone. I'm just as responsible for it as those two bastards, even if I wasn't the one did the dirty work. As far as I'm concerned the only thing I could do for him now is to end this war by whatever means necessary, he said. What about the members of your team, Sasuke? The question came from Shino. Though Sasuke was willing to fight Madara, his team, not knowing Naruto as well, were not as inclined to partake on this endeavor. When the time comes I'll place them in a Jinjutsu so that they won't get in the way. Do we have a deal? Sasuke asked. After a few moments of silence Shikamaru decided to respond. This is such a drag, but if what everyone is saying about Madara is true, then we'll need all the help we can get, Shikamaru said, thereby earning Sasuke's cooperation. As the Leaf Shinobi went back to the Sade, along with the Uchiha, were unknowingly headed towards a collision course that no one in the Shinobi world could have ever seen coming. Urahara Shop, Karakura Town, Human Realm. Current time. The carnage the people observing Naruto's fight with Ichigo were witnessing made Kisuke's training facility look like a scene right out of a World War II battlefield. The fight had left the secret training area with several new craters, canyons, and upturned boulders among the growing list of new features. The damage incurred in the training extended to the damage inflicted on both fighters. Iruchi, who was one of the spectators, turned to Kisuke as another clang indicated that Tensa Zangetsu and Kenja had collided again. Should we tell those two to stop? She asked him, to which Kisuke shook his head. Naruto still needs a little more time to get used to fighting with his Zanpakuto before he can begin his official training, so let them duke it out. Besides this fight is too enjoyable for me to end it, Kisuke replied. Now it was Iruchi who was shaking her head. Kisuke then sighed before he continued speaking. Though I'll be honest, I never thought that he would be this powerful. Even with the amount of spiritual energy Naruto has, I never imagined he could unleash so much of it with just his Shikai alone, or that he would be able to fight on the same level with Ichigo, despite his lack of experience, Kisuke stated as Naruto dodged a barrage of attacks from Ichigo. Naruto then stepped back until he had created a distance of about 30 yards between himself and the substitute Soul Reaper. He then made a hand seal while holding his Zanpakuto in his right elbow pit. Shadow Clone Jutsu, he yelled before getting engulfed in a cloud of smoke. The smoke dissipated quickly, revealing that Naruto had created 21 clones, all of them wielding a copy of his Zanpakuto. The copies, though having the same amount of spiritual pressure as the real Kenja, were still copies of the original and would disperse along with their respective clone, then the clone was dispersed. This didn't make these clones any less dangerous, however, as Ichigo and the others knew all too well. Having experienced what Naruto could do with this jutsu firsthand. How can he keep making so many clones? Ichigo thought to himself as he tried to assess the situation. The fight had gone on for about 2 hours already, despite the fact that he and his student opponent were already seriously injured, with Naruto in only slightly worse shape than he was. They had also stretched their stamina, in terms of both their physical endurance and their levels of energy, to their respective limits. Despite having levels of stamina that were beyond comprehension, neither Ichigo nor Naruto had ever forced so much of their energy in such a short time. If the fact that the top half of Ichigo's Shihakishima be used to measure how much spiritual pressure he has left based on how much damage it has sustained was completely missing was anything to go by. As Ichigo pushed those thoughts aside, 10 of Naruto's shadow clones came charging at him. Ichigo dodged a slash from the first clone and slashed it across the chest, which caused the clone to disperse. Ichigo then began to build up his spiritual pressure for a very large Itsuga Tenshin as the other clones began closing in on him. The real Naruto, meanwhile, silently cursed his predicament. He and 11 of the other clones had been preparing to use 4 Rasen Shurikens, but now, with Ichigo about to use his Zanpakuto's signature technique, he caught Naruto in a bind. If Naruto still attempted to complete the Rasen Shuriken, Ichigo would catch him and his clones in his Jutsuga, since he could use his attack in before Naruto could fully complete his. If Naruto tried to dispel the uncompleted jutsu, the wind chakra, which is unstable due to the fact that the nature transformation hadn't been completed, would cause significant damage to his right arm and could potentially render it unusable for the rest of the fight. Damn it, I'm in trouble. What do I do now? Think, Naruto, thought to himself. Before Naruto even realized it, he suddenly found himself standing before Kenja in his spiritual state. You do realize that I'm still here, right? She asked him as if she was mocking him. Naruto's eyes twitched in annoyance. If you have an idea, why don't you just tell me what it is? Naruto asked the newest resident within his mind in an irritated tone. You do know that I have special attacks and abilities as well, right? I can aid you with the use of one of these abilities right now until you are able to train yourself to use it along with the others, she told him. Naruto cited explanation this before he replied. And what about my Rasen Shuriken? I can't just dispel it without injuring my arm. Kurama has a harder time healing wounds caused by my wind chakra attacks. He was only referring, of course, to the instances where his wind-style jutsu would disperse when he hadn't properly mastered the use of his nature release. Then don't dispel the attack. I was actually going to use the chakra from your Rasen Shuriken to help you perform the attack, she claimed. Naruto was taken aback by the suggestion. I thought that his Zanpakuto used spiritual energy. How are you able to use chakra? He asked her. Kenja shook her head before she answered him. You're right about me not being able to use chakra. What I am able to do, however, is to convert your chakra into spiritual energy. Naruto was about to respond but was cut off by his Zanpakuto, who hadn't finished her explanation. Do you remember when Rukia mentioned that the abilities of a Zanpakuto are determined by the soul and personality of its wielder? You're no exception to that rule, Naruto. The difference here is that you have the abilities of both a ninja and a soul reaper and, as a direct result of this, I have the ability to convert chakra into spiritual energy into chakra and vice versa, she explained. After a few moments Naruto smirked. Then what are we waiting for? He asked, to which Kenja smiled. There's one more thing you should know, Naruto, she said before she told him what it was. Outside of Naruto's mind, Ichigo had just about finished the buildup of his spiritual pressure for his Jutsuga. Though Naruto and Kenja had been conversing for a good while in his spiritual state, the world around Naruto had only advanced a few milliseconds. As he was too focused on trying to aim his attack so it would hit Naruto and the attacking clones, Ichigo failed to notice that the clones that were standing beside Naruto had vanished. Ichigo also didn't realize that the Rasen Shuriken Naruto was preparing had also vanished. Naruto was now holding his Zanpakuto with both hands. The right hand gripped the staff near its center, while his left hand was placed just above one of the metal-plated bases. The position that Naruto held the staff gave the impression that he was going to swing the staff. Everyone watching the fight, with Kurama being the only exception, realized that Naruto's new stance mirrored that of Ichigo's when the latter uses his Jutsuga, just like he is about right now. The spectators, for lack of a more fitting word, were extremely confused, though Renji was the only one to voice his confusion. What the hell is Naruto doing? Does he said before an immense amount of spiritual pressure was unleashed by Naruto. Ichigo's face, not surprisingly, paled at this development. He, at this moment, decided to unleash his attack. Jutsuga Tenshin. He roared as he swung his blade, releasing the deadly mass of black spiritual energy. The moment the Jutsuga destroyed the 9 remaining shadow clones, Naruto unleashed his attack, the name of which he had learned from Kenja. IBMFK translates to Great Windstorm. Naruto roared in reply. Ichigo then watched in horror as Naruto channeled his spiritual pressure through the upper half of his Zanpakuto, forming a wave of spiritual energy that everyone, including Ichigo, were even more shocked when Naruto then created a very powerful and condensed gust of wind, which now enveloped the wave of spiritual energy, creating a sort of invisible outer shell for the attack, while Naruto's orange spiritual was still visible from the inside, creating a core for the attack. The attack was essentially 2 very powerful flying buzzsaws that were put together into one attack. Naruto swung his staff, unleashing his wind-enhanced spiritual attack which it soon collided with Ichigo's attack. The resulting explosion caused a mini-earthquake inside the training area, causing everyone in there to look on in awe at the power of these 2 combatants. Ichigo thought that he at least managed to stop Naruto's eye. Ichigo's assumption was soon dashed, however, when he was struck by the shell of wind that was part of Naruto's attack. Ichigo, who received a number of serious wounds all across his body as Aristotle, had only blunted the wave of spiritual pressure that formed the core of the IBMFK. Since his attempts to overpower the ninja were not working, Ichigo decided to try to beat Naruto with his speed, as he hadn't seen any clear indications that the ninja could match him in that aspect. Ichigo flash-stepped just as Naruto began charging towards him. Naruto stopped his attack as the speed at which Ichigo was moving created a series of afterimages. This shocked Naruto greatly. The times that Naruto had witnessed Ichigo's Bankai did not force the Soul Reaper to use his speed, so the ninja Soul Reaper didn't expect Ichigo to move that fast. Ichigo, after slashing Naruto several times, decides to mock him. I am going too slow for you, Naruto. I could go a little faster if you want, Ichigo taunted as he went to attack Naruto again. Ichigo managed to slash Naruto across the chest, ending the fight, or so he thought. Naruto simply gave a light chuckle, slightly irritating Ichigo. What's so funny, Naru, he asked before Naruto vanished in a puff of smoke. Unbeknownst to Ichigo, the real Naruto had used the cover of the explosion from the collision of Ichigo's Jutsuga with his BMFK to swap places with one of his clones, which was what Ichigo had been slashing at. Before Ichigo realized what had happened, Naruto appeared behind him. "Guess what, Ichigo? I can go fast too," he said. Ichigo turned to find Naruto right behind him squatting and clasping his hands together with the middle and index fingers pointed out. While he could have reacted to this turn of events, Ichigo was too confused by what Naruto was doing for the idea to register in his mind. But that was the only thing Ichigo could say before Naruto gave him a mischievous smile. Leaf Village Secret Finger Jutsu. He roared as he placed his fingers in the place where the sun don't shine, so to speak. Ichigo suddenly felt a sharp pain in his ass and was suddenly propelled forward as Naruto finished declaring the name of this jutsu. 1000 years of death. Everyone in the room looked at this scene with obvious horror. Half of the people there were just thinking about how wrong this was, while the other half were thinking of what they would do to Naruto if he tried this stunt on them. Ichigo, meanwhile, had landed about 100 yards from where Naruto had humiliated him. As he stood back up, Ichigo was suddenly surrounded by 3 Rasen shurikens. Naruto had actually used the jutsu to send Ichigo into this trap and to get some payback against the Soul Reaper for the whole Shattered Shaft episode, though the use of these Rin shurikens drained the clones of the rest of their chakra, causing them to dissipate. Ichigo, whose body had also reached its breaking point, used the last bit of endurance he had to perform another flash step just before the 3 attacks collided with each other at the spot where he just was. After Ichigo observed the massive explosion that nearly consumed him leave yet another large crater in its wake, he went to find Naruto so he could end the battle, only to find that Naruto was on the ground. He had used the last of his energy to attack him with one of the Rasen shurikens and finally collapsed due to his exhaustion and injuries. Ichigo walked up to the blonde-haired ninja Soul Reaper who was still, though barely, conscious. He won't lose to you next time, Ichigo, Naruto said before he finally lost consciousness. As Ichigo stood there, his breath coming in heavy gasps, Kisuke, Yoruchi, and everyone else walked up to the 2 Soul Reapers. Kurama looked at Naruto, then at Ichigo. I'm impressed, Ichigo. I never imagined that you would defeat Naruto so easily, he said. He was surprised when Ichigo shook his head at this comment. That's where you're wrong, Kurama. I actually should have lost this fight, he said, getting shocked glances from the others. What are you talking about, Ichigo? The question was made by, of all people, who are you? Ichigo decided to tell them the truth. The reality is that Naruto is already stronger than I am. He stopped using Kurama's chakra some point in the fight and was still way past my level. The only reason I'm still standing is because he had no experience in using his Soul Reaper powers, nothing more. Give him just a week of training and this fight would have ended differently, he said before he fainted, his wounds and exhaustion having taken its toll on him as well. Kisuke looked at Kurama, who nodded back. This confirmed, in Kisuke's mind, Ichigo's claim about Naruto having stopped his use of the tailed beast's chakra. He then motioned for Orihime to come and begin healing both combatants before turning his attention to Yoruchi. I guess, in the end, they've both earned a trip to Isen's clinic, he said as Kurama's chakra had already begun to heal Naruto's injuries. Yoruchi was inclined to agree with the former 12th Division captain. Even though they would only need a few days, both Ichigo and Naruto would still needed proper medical treatment due to their extreme injuries. Ishiro was shocked by this display of the young ninja's strength and had almost decided not to make this next statement, which he directed at Kurama, as if it were a question. I hope young Naruto's growth rate is as great as his fighting ability, he said, to which Kurama simply smiled back. You have no idea. That was the only thing Kurama said to him. He, along with everyone else in the training area, had no idea how thankful they would be for that growth rate. For while they were observing this battle, another group was planning for a battle of its own. Espada meeting room, Las Noches, Hueco Mundo. A week later. It had taken a long time for Sasuke, the ruler of Las Noches and former captain in the Gate 13, to bring the current Espada together as a force. It had now taken a similarly unbearable amount of time for them to just return to the fortress for this important meeting. At least 5 of them had been searching, on Aizen's orders, for more Vasto Lords class Minos. It had taken 6 days just for the new order to reach these Espada and another 2.5 days for these Espada to return to Las Noches. Aizen could only hope that the efforts he made to create this force would not be in vain, as dealing with the Espada and the rest of the Arankar army for that matter had always was such a pain. With his ability to mask his emotions, so to speak, the Espada were unaware of their leader's dislike of them even as they were next to him as they waited for their meeting to begin. After a few minutes of silence, Aizen, with his subordinates Jin Ichimaru and Kanam Tosen seated beside him, decided to begin the meeting. Please enter, Ulquiorra, Aizen commanded as a door on the far side of the room opened. Ulquiorra, who had returned to Las Noches at the same time that Naruto and the Soul Reapers had arrived at Karakura town, had already given his report to Aizen and was now going to present it to his fellow Espada. Ulquiorra looked at Aizen as if he were waiting for an order. When Aizen nodded, the 4th Espada removed and subsequently crushed his left eye. An image soon formed from the ashes of the crushed eye, showing a recording of Ulquiorra's encounter with Naruto. Ladies and gentlemen of the Espada, we have an approaching threat of the highest level. It would appear that the Sage of the Six Paths reincarnate has finally appeared, Aizen declared as he and his subordinates discussed their plans to deal with the blonde-haired ninja. Next time darkness approaches. Espada meeting room, Las Noches, Hueco Mundo. Current time. Recap. Ladies and gentlemen of the Espada, we have the approaching threat of the highest level. It would appear that the Sage of the Six Paths reincarnate has appeared, Aizen declared. After Ulquiorra paused the recording at the point that Naruto had dodged his attack, Aizen informed the Espada of the situation regarding this person. As he gave this explanation, some of the Espada weren't convinced that the blonde-haired teenager was even worth Aizen's time since he appeared, to them at least, very similar to Ichigo Kurosaki, whom Aizen had also invested an interest in, and he was viewed as trash by the Arankor after Ulquiorra and Yami Largo's encounter with Kurosaki. What do you think of him, Ulquiorra? Aizen asked the Espada, well aware of the skepticism among the Arankors. He is very similar to Kurosaki. His power, however, is far greater than that piece of trash, Ulquiorra replied before he looked at Aizen, as if he was making sure that Aizen approved of what he would say next. Aizen nodded. I would go as far as to say that he may even be more powerful than Lord Aizen, Ulquiorra claimed as everyone's eyes widened, except Aizen's, Jin's, and Tosen's, at what the fourth Espada said. If that's the case, then why did you not capture the boy as you were ordered to? The question came from Jin, who was sporting his fox-like grin as he usually was. The former 3rd Division captain had been informed of the ninja's arrival a few minutes after Aizen and was surprised to find that Ulquiorra had returned without his target. Because I had also ordered him to return without the boy if he was spotted by any Soul Reaper, Aizen said in defense of the Espada. Ulquiorra then continued his recording, which ended shortly after Ichigo, Rukia, Kenpachi, and Byakuya interrupted the fight. How was the Gate 13 able to respond so quickly when they're still reeling from the attack by Kurosaki and the other humans? Jin asked Aizen. Aizen just shook his head. It is of no concern to us. The only thing we must focus on is determining how we will deal with the ninja, Aizen replied. Though Tosen and the Espada didn't catch up on it, Jin, who was able to read Aizen's manipulations, realized that Aizen did not know how the enemy had responded so quickly and was unnerved by this, even if the former captain of the 5th Division didn't reveal it. I'm sending a force of 5 of you to go to Karakura town, where the Shinobi is currently located. Since he'll have undoubtedly awakened his Soul Reaper abilities, you will only attempt to gauge his abilities, so do not try to capture him yet. Those of you who are on this force will not be bringing your Frachians if you have any, Aizen said as everyone looked at him as if he had gone mad. Are you certain that such a force is necessary, Lord Aizen? Tosen asked. If this boy is even half as powerful as the Sage of the Sith Paths was said to be, then he must be approached with extreme caution. Anyone below Espada level would not survive an encounter with this child, and it is too early to begin suffering casualties, Aizen replied before he assembled this strike force. Ulquiorra then opened a Garganta for the group of Espada, which included Ulquiorra, Yami, Grimjoji Jurjakas, Coyote Sterk, and Tyr Harribel. Lilinet Gingerbik, who was not an Espada, was also allowed to go as Sterk had sealed his power within her instead of as Anpakudo, to go to the human realm. After the Garganta closed behind the group, the rest of Espada left the meeting room, leaving Aizen with his fellow ex-captains. Is this boy that important? Jin asked. I never thought that the sages reincarnate would appear at this moment, and I didn't plan for it. Before we can proceed any further, we must know who we're dealing with, Aizen explained. The traitor to the Soul Society could only hope that he was wrong about the ninja. Urahara shop. Meanwhile. Different. If you asked Kisuke to describe Naruto after 2 weeks of observing the ninja, this would be the only word he could use, which would come as a surprise to many of those who are acquainted with the former 12th Division captain. Kisuke had a feeling that Naruto would be viewed with the same sentiment in his own world. The closest person that Urahara compared the ninja to was Ichigo, and, despite the fact that they were similar, that'd still be selling the ninja short. Naruto's training was proof of this. It has been a week since Naruto and Ichigo had fought one another. Kisuke had both Soul Reapers sent to Isen's clinic to recover some of their minor wounds so as not to arouse any suspicions from those in Karakura town who were not aware of who Naruto truly was. Naruto had recovered from his injuries only half a day after the fight. After Ichigo had recovered from his wounds a few hours later, Naruto began his actual training under the substitute Soul Reaper, with Uruchi also helping with his training. It was slow going in the first couple of hours as Naruto was a slow learner, at least when the 2 Soul Reapers tried to explain the lessons to him. That changed instantaneously, however, when they decided to have Naruto learn these techniques through experience. They never imagined that anyone could have a growth rate this monstrous. Ichigo, who had a ridiculous growth rate himself, might take a couple of days to complete a lesson, whereas Naruto could complete that same lesson in a couple of hours, and that's if he's not using his unusual training method that had him use his shadow clones. After first mastering the use of Shunpo and Zanjutsu, he then proceeded to master the use of the special abilities his Zanpakuto, Kenja. Since Naruto's shadow clones were useless when it came to this part of the training, it took Naruto a little more time to complete than the others. Just trying to figure out what type of Zanpakuto Kenja is was a challenge, since she had multiple abilities across no less than 3 different Zanpakuto types. Kenja is essentially a melee type wind type and, strangely enough, sealing Kido type Zanpakuto all in one blade or, to be more correct, staff. It was the sealing type capabilities of his Zanpakuto that he was learning to use right now, since there was not much else they could teach him, other than Bankai of course. While everyone else was either training for the upcoming war with Aizen or attending to other matter, important or otherwise, Naruto was trying to catch Orochi with one of his Zanpakuto seals. While the chances of actually catching the goddess of Flash were slim to none, this exercise would help him learn to better utilize these seals. As Orochi dodged another of Naruto's seals, Ichigo, Kisuke, and Kurama observed the ninja's training. While Ichigo was usually the one helping Naruto with his Zanpakuto training, this lesson required the faster of Naruto's 2 mentors. "Is she too fast for you to handle, Naruto?" Ichigo taunted, to which Naruto responded by releasing a nearby shadow clone. When that happened, Naruto's eyes changed, with his irides turning yellow, his pupils becoming horizontal bars, and reddish-orange pigmentation appearing around his eyes. Ichigo paled at seeing that Naruto had switched to Sage mode so quickly. "And I thought Naruto had some sort of death wish. If Naruto accidentally kills you, Ichigo, using Shunken, can I have Zanjutsu?" Kurama asked Ichigo in a mocking manner. Kurama, after obtaining a human form, had gained a mischievous side like Kenja and Naruto, though it was far more subtle by comparison. "Shut up." Ichigo roared back at Kurama. He clearly did not find the tailed beast's sense of humor amusing, since Naruto had nearly killed him before he had fully mastered the use of the Hakuto Kido hybrid technique. Before Kurama even had a chance to laugh at Ichigo's reaction, he, Naruto, Kisuke, Orochi, and Toshiro, who was one of the other Soul Reapers in the training area at the time, sensed the spiritual pressure of what appeared to be 6 rankers, 5 of them being at Espada level. After a few tense moments of silence, Naruto finally voiced the feelings that all Soul Reapers present were most certainly harboring. "I guess Aizen's little war had finally started," he said. On the outskirts of Karakura town, human realm. A few minutes later. The 5 Espada arrived in the world of living and immediately proceeded with objectives. Sterk, Lilinet and Grimjo attempted to divert the attention of the Soul Reapers, with Grimjo also attempting to attract the attention of Kurosaki so that he could finish the fight that Ulquiorra didn't, while Yami, Ulquiorra and Harribel attempting to lure out Naruto. After the first 2 groups fanned out, Yami turned to his fellow Espada. "So are we going to draw this kid out, Ulquiorra?" the 10th Zero Espada asked. "The same way we lured Kurosaki to us. We will attack the people of this town, though this time it'll only be those with above average levels of spiritual pressure," Ulquiorra explained as his group began to move, looking for any unfortunate soul who was spiritually aware. Somewhere in Karakura town, human realm. Current time. Recap. "So how are we going to draw this kid out, Ulquiorra?" the 10th Zero Espada asked. "The same way we lured Kurosaki to us. We will attack the people of this town, though this time it'll only be those with above average levels of spiritual pressure," Ulquiorra explained as his group began to move, looking for any unfortunate soul who was spiritually aware. While Ulquiorra, Harribel and Yami attempted to flush out Naruto, Grimjo, in an attempt to draw out Ichigo, began searching for anyone with spiritual pressure to attack. After searching for a few minutes, he was surprised when he came across his very target standing before him. "Are you Ichigo Kurosaki?" he asked, to which the substitute Soul Reaper nodded in reply. "I'm the 6th Espada, Grimjo Jijurjack is, and I'm the ranker that's going to kill you," Grimjo proclaimed. Ichigo, in response to Grimjo's declaration, was about to unsheath Zangetsu when Rukia, who was standing by his side, tried to prevent him from fighting. "We can't risk having your inner hollow break out, Ichigo, and you still haven't fully recovered from your fight with Naruto. You need to fall back," she said. Ichigo, despite having most of his wounds healed, still had a few organs that were still recovering from that slugfest. Ichigo, naturally, refused to listen. "This guy's after me. If I don't fight him, someone else going to get attacked by this guy," Ichigo said. Before Rukia could reply, Grimjo, using their argument as an opening, snuck up on the unseated officer of the 13th Division and proceeded to impale her in the abdomen. As Rukia fell to the ground, having been rendered unconscious but was still alive, Grimjo turned his attention to Ichigo, whose eyes were suddenly filled with a rage that bordered on killing intent. "You're next, Kurosaki," Grimjo said with a maniacal grin on his face, while Ichigo unleashed his spiritual pressure. "Bankai," he roared as his sword shrunk to its familiar black straight sword form. At this point Renji, who had just arrived, went to Rukia's side. Seeing that she was not in immediate danger, he prepared to engage the Espada until Ichigo got in front of the 6th Division lieutenant. "I'll face this guy. You have to get Rukia to safety," Ichigo said. After a short argument that Grimjo, miraculously, did not interrupt, Renji finally agreed to get Rukia out of harm's way. Once the two Soul Reapers had left, Ichigo turned his attention to the Espada. "I'll kill you for what you've done," Ichigo hissed as he and the Espada prepared to clash. Elsewhere, Hashiro, Ikaku, Yumichika, Ranjiku and Chad had confronted Coyote and Lilinet before they got to the city limits. As every readied themselves for battle, Toshiro, as the highest ranked Reaper present, decided to question the Espada before the fight began. "Where are the other rankers? We know there are 4 other ones, and 3 of them have not attacked any of us. Their spiritual pressure has also vanished," Toshiro asked the lazy-eyed Sterk. "I'm not allowed to tell you, Soul Reapers. I'm just here to draw you out," the first Espada replied as he drew his Zanpakuto. Toshiro was confused by the second part of the Espada's sentence for a few moments. Once its meaning finally hit him, however, the captain's eyes widened in shock. "The other rankers must be after Naruto," Toshiro reasoned. He was about to tell Ranjiku, his lieutenant, to inform Kisuke of this when the Espada used his Sanito to appear in front of Hitsugaya. The silver-haired Soul Reaper barely had enough time to block Sterk's attacks. "As much I would prefer to avoid going into battle, I'm afraid my orders were clear. I can't let you Soul Reapers interfere," the Espada said as the other Soul Reapers released their respective Zanpakutos while Chad activated his Brazo Derecha del Gigante. Hidden training area, Urahara shop. Meanwhile, the employees of the shop were hiding in fear of what they were seeing. One of the Gate 13 captains had arrived from the Soul Society only moments ago and had asked Yuruchi if she could meet Naruto. Unfortunately, Kisuke had informed her that Naruto gone missing a few minutes ago. Urahara had tried to force Naruto to stay in his Suedo body in order to keep him hidden. In all of the mayhem that was occurring, Urahara had forgotten, somehow, that Naruto did not separate from his body like Ichigo and the others when he went into his Soul Reaper form. Naruto used this cock-up on Kisuke's part to his advantage by making 2 clones, having one of them transform into Kurama's human form while using the tailed beast's chakra to perform that transformation. While Kurama, who was able to re-enter Naruto's body at any time, went back into Naruto's body, the clone that did not transform asked for a bottle of water. After receiving that bottle, the clone went to where his original was hiding. The ninja then transformed into an exact copy of the bottle while the clone drank all of the water in the actual bottle. After hiding that bottle in one of his pouches, the clone then got one Jinta to go throw the bottle since the nearest trash can was at the entrance to the store. Once Jinta threw the fake bottle away and went back into the training area under the store, Naruto released the Transformation Jutsu and, while keeping his power suppressed, made his escape, with Kurama coming out of Naruto when they had gotten a few miles away from the store. It was at that point that both Kisuke and Yuruchi discovered what had happened. All in all, this escape took a few minutes to complete. Despite the brilliance of the plan, however, Soifin was still not amused. "How do you not know where Uzumaki is, you dumbass?" she roared at the helpless shopkeeper as she tried to kick him in the face. While Urahara knew that she still despised him, he didn't expect her to be in that much of a bad mood. Yuruchi was equally surprised by this display of rage. "Now what's with the sudden temper, Soifin?" the goddess of Flash asked, almost mockingly, as her former student continued to try, unsuccessfully, to land a blow on her second least favorite person in the universe. That distinction had, for the time being, gone to someone that Soifin has yet to meet. Soifin had learned that Yuruchi had trained Naruto in the use of the Shunpo and Shunken through the reports brought in by the executive militia. While this had undoubtedly angered the captain's 2nd division, she was even more infuriated when she also learned that this Chakra Realm ninja had, supposedly, perfected the signature technique of corps commanders of the executive militia to an even greater extent than either she or her former mentor. It was this last claim that compelled her to go to Karakura town when she got the opportunity to do so. When Soifin arrived, she found out, however, that not only had the Espada begun their attack only a few minutes prior, but that the object of her new grudge, who was also the one that the Arankers were likely after, had given both Kisuke and Yuruchi the slip. The 2nd division captain was, obviously, not happy about any of this. Soifin was about to explain herself when, out of nowhere, a sudden surge of spiritual pressure from 3 more individuals emanated from the outskirts on far side of town. Soifin, Kisuke and Yuruchi then felt their hearts stop cold when another individual near the first 3 released his or her spiritual pressure. Unlike the other 3, however, this one had another energy emanating from, an energy that was also being released by a 5th person. "Those 2 fools, Naruto and Kurama, are already fighting the Espada," Yuruchi said with apprehension, remembering that the tailed beast had also escaped. Before she could do anything else, however, she saw that Soifin had just released the Shikai of her Zanpakuto. "Let me deal with this, Lady Yuruchi," Soifin requested. She didn't even bother to wait for a reply, however, as she left the training area a split second later. Soifin. Yoruichi yelled as her former student left, heading in the direction of the emerging battle. Yoruichi then turned to her old friend Kisuke before they both used their shunpo. There was something they had to do before they went to that battle. Near the outskirts of Karakura town. While the preceding events were occurring. Since their fellow rankers had drawn out many of the spiritual-aware individuals, Karakura town, Ulquiorra, Yami, and Harribel had a hard time finding anyone they could attack in order to draw their target out. Yami, being who he is, was losing his patience. "Come on, Ulquiorra, can we just kill anyone that we find?" he asked. Aizen's orders were clear on this matter, Largo. "We were ordered to only attack those with above-average spiritual pressure if we needed to draw him out," Ulquiorra replied. Before Yami else could say anything else, however, the Espada noticed that a nearby human was looking at them. It was a little girl with large dark gray eyes and black hair that was straight and cropped to hang around her face. Unfortunately for her, the girl also had a larger amount of spiritual pressure than a normal human. "Who the hell are you people?" she asked. The girl shuddered when Yami simply grinned, though the evil undertones of his grin made the girl's reaction understandable. Finally. "Hey Ulquiorra, can I kill her?" he asked his fellow Espada. The girl's eyes widened in terror when she heard this. As the girl stood there, paralyzed with fear, Yami walked up to her and was about to grab her when he noticed a bunch of what-to-be Reishi arrows flying at him. The Espada simply moved out of the way as he, along with the other two Espada, saw the source of the projectiles appear before them. The girl recognized the person. "Ryu?" the girl asked, to which the Quincy nodded. Before he could say anything else, another voice was heard. "Thank goodness we found you, Karen," the voice said. Karen looked to her left and saw Orihime standing beside her. "You two need to get out of here right now," Uryu said as he raised his spirit weapon towards the rankers. "But Uryu," Orihime said before the Yami charged at the three. Uryu tried to stop him with his arrows, but Yami's arrow was deflecting every the Quincy threw at him. The Espada proceeded to backhand Uryu, which sent him flying. "Uryu!" Orihime screeched in terror before she realized that Yami was now in front of them. "Didn't you learn your lesson the last time we met?" the Espada asked as he threw a punch at her. She was about to activate her Shun Rika when she heard a familiar voice. "You won't need to use that, Orihime." Orihime suddenly realized that someone had blocked the Espada's punch with only his left hand. She knew who it was without him having to say or do anything else. "How did you find us, Naruto?" she asked the Ninja Soul Reaper. Naruto turned to her and, while still gripping Yami, flashed his usual grin. "One of my many skills," Naruto said. Karen, having met Naruto when he came to Ichigo's house the day after he arrived in Karakura town, was not surprised to see him dressed as Soul Reaper. Yami, whose hand was still being gripped by Naruto, burst into a maniacal laugh. "Hey suerte, Spanish for what luck?" The brat fell for it. Yami yelled out. Naruto turned his head to Yami, his expression turning serious. "Fell for what, Espada? I know that you guys are after me. I also know that you guys were attacking innocent people in order to get me to come out. It's not like I haven't gone through this before," Naruto said. At this point Harribel, who had been silent for the whole attack up until then, decided to question him on this. "If that's true, then why did you still confront us?" the third Espada asked. "Because I'm not the kind of guy who just sits back while innocent people die because of me," Naruto replied, getting a raised eyebrow from the vasto Lord ranker. "Then you're just stupid," Yami taunted smugly. "And you're a weak coward. You're barely a step above trash," Naruto retorted, having learned from Ichigo and the others what the Espada tended to call their enemies. Yami's expression suddenly turned from smug to enraged the moment he heard Naruto's insult. "I'll kill you for that." Yami roared as he tried to rear his other hand back for a punch. Before he could unleash that strike, however, another person appeared and punched Yami in the gut, sending the Espada flying. "You took your sweet time, Kurama," Naruto said to the person. "Does it matter? I got here in time, didn't I?" Kurama said. Ignoring the tailed beast's reply, Naruto prepared a Rasengan. Unlike the previous times, however, he didn't need a clone to form the shell. He then flash-stepped right in front of the flying Espada. "Rasengan!" Naruto roared as he jammed his jutsu into Yami's gut. To the surprise of the other two Espada, the jutsu caused Yami to fly back like a spinning top before he was stopped by the fifth tree he had hit, which rendered him unconscious. As Naruto walked back towards Orihime and the others, Kurama flashed a smile. "So how's your chakra control?" he asked his Jinchuriki, who smiled. "It's actually not as bad as I thought it would still be," Naruto replied. Naruto, during his Soul Reaper training, had not neglected his jutsus and, while training to keep his jutsus sharp, he found that he actually had very decent chakra control, now that Kurama was no longer presenting a negative influence either within him or when he was outside of his body. This, combined with the still monstrous chakra reserves from both him and Kurama, meant that he could make his jutsus a lot deadlier. Pushing those thoughts aside, Naruto turned to Orihime. "We're going to take this fight elsewhere. When Kurama, Cypher, that lady, and I are out of sight, heal Ryu, and then get yourself and Karen out of here," he said. Orihime, though concerned for Naruto's safety, nodded in reply as she knew that he, like Ichigo, would not take no for an answer. Naruto and his tailed beast comrade then turned to face the Espada. "I'll take on Cypher. You shall take on the women," Kurama said, getting a raised eyebrow from Naruto. "Are you sure about that, Kurama?" Naruto asked. He could tell that the woman was the stronger of the two and had assumed that his tailed beast would have wanted to face her. "You'll probably end up using some of my chakra in the battle. Though I would still be stronger than either one of these rankers, one can never be too careful," Kurama explained, getting a nod from Naruto. "Are you two finished talking?" Ulquiorra asked the two. Kurama stood before the fourth Espada in response. "Why don't we take this fight elsewhere, Ulquiorra?" Kurama asked the Espada, having heard the first conversation between the ranker and Naruto a couple of weeks earlier. Ulquiorra, without saying anything, simply used his Sanito to head to an area farther away from the town. After Kurama followed the Espada, Naruto, sensing that the female Espada had moved to yet another location, shunpo towards the direction of her trailing spiritual pressure as he readied himself for his toughest fight yet. Next time, the power of a tailed beast. Kurama vs Ulquiorra. Karakura town outskirts, human realm. Recap. Kurama stood before the fourth Espada. "Why don't we take this fight elsewhere, Ulquiorra?" Kurama asked the Espada, having heard the first conversation between the ranker and Naruto a couple of weeks earlier. Ulquiorra, without saying anything, simply used his Sanito to head to an area farther away from the town. Current time. Kurama was speeding off to the area where Ulquiorra was waiting for him. With his natural speed surpassing that of most Shunpo masters, it didn't take him long to reach his opponent's location, a small forest clearing several miles away from town. Interesting, Kurama thought to himself before he spoke to the fourth Espada. "So tell me, Ulquiorra, why did you agree to my request so easily?" Kurama asked, as had expected his opponent to use the vicinity of the town as a psychological shield against him. "Because if I had stayed too close to the town, I would not be able to fight you with my full power, which it appears that I'll need to use if I hope to defeat you, Shinobi," Ulquiorra said to his opponent, knowing that Aizen wanted to use the town to create the Okin. Although the Espada was right in proceeding with caution against his opponent, he was totally unaware of what he was truly dealing with, though Kurama decided to change that. "Heh, you rankers are totally clueless if you don't even know what I truly am. That goes for your little puppet master Aizen as well," Kurama chided, getting a raised eyebrow from his opponent. "What are you saying?" Ulquiorra asked as he unsheathed his Zanpakuto. Kurama simply smiled as he unsheathed his sword and stuck it to the ground. Unlike Naruto's Kenja, Kurama's new blade is not Zanpakuto, but it is, however, able to be used against those who do wield them, and it can still purify a hollow or perform the Kanso, thanks to certain things that Kisuke had done to this blade. "I'm not a shinobi. I'm not even human. I was just given a human form," Kurama explained. He could sense that the Espada was rather shocked by this revelation, even if his facial expression didn't show it. "What are you then, if you're not human?" Ulquiorra asked. Kurama's smile didn't leave his face as he pointed his right thumb at his chest. "My name is Kurama and I am a tailed beast. You may know me as the nine-tailed fox," Kurama declared. He smirked when he saw Ulquiorra's eyes widen in shock. "If you're a tailed beast, then that would mean that the shinobi is," Ulquiorra said before Kurama interrupted him. "By Jinchuriki, and a very strong one at that," Kurama said as Ulquiorra prepared to release his Zanpakuto. "Imprison, Murcielago, Spanish for bat," Ulquiorra said as a burst of black spiritual pressure with a green outline began to burst from and fall around Ulquiorra as green rain. Ulquiorra suddenly became bat-like in appearance. He now had large black bat wings on his back, his hair became longer and wilder, and the remains of his hollow mask were now centered atop his head and with two large horns extending outward to the sides towards the front of the mask. The lines on his face became black, broad and more triangular, while his fingernails lengthened. His Arankara attire also became more form-fitting and closed at the top, while it was now more like a robe towards the bottom. Despite the more menacing appearance and apparent increase in power, however, Kurama was not impressed. "Is this it? Is that all the strength you can muster? Ulquiorra, you disappoint me. I don't even need one tail to defeat you if this is all you have. I only need to go this far," Kurama said. Before Ulquiorra could question this, Kurama rolled back the left sleeve of his shirt, revealing a seal that consists of the kanji for Yun release, surrounded by a trigram seal of sorts. Kurama built up some chakra in the palm of his hands and placed that hand on the seal, causing the seal to disappear. When that seal vanished, Ulquiorra noted, in shock, that the tailed beast's power instantly doubled. The Espada then looked on shock as Kurama began to release his chakra, which affected the tailed beast's body. His eyes became blood red, with his pupils becoming slitted. His hair also changed to the same color while it grew to waist length. His canine teeth became longer, turning into fangs, while his fingernails did same, turning into claws. Kurama's overall appearance resembled Naruto's initial Jinchuriki form and, as Ulquiorra was about to learn, it was more powerful than the Naruto used. Kurama's chakra emanated all around him as he looked at Ulquiorra, who tried to unleash some sort of attack. Lazdalalun, Ulquiorra said as he tried to create some sort of green energy javelin. Unfortunately for the Espada, Kurama moved right of him before he could lift his new weapon. Too slow, Kurama said as he grabbed Ulquiorra by the throat and pushed the Espada to the ground. The resulting collision between Ulquiorra and the ground left a giant crater several dozen yards wide, a scene of devastation that was only matched by the injuries that the Espada had just suffered. "Are you done yet, Espada?" Kurama asked his opponent as he backed up. As Ulquiorra got up, he held his injured left arm, his high-speed regeneration nullified by the foreign nature of Kurama's chakra. "I know you're holding back, Cypher. If you don't use your full power against me, you will die here," the tailed beast said as he kept attacking the Espada, who could barely dodge the tailed beast. Ulquiorra realized that his opponent was right. The full power that Kurama referred to was, however, that the Espada did not want to use until he revealed it to Aizen. In the end, however, Ulquiorra decided that there was no way around it anymore. "Very well then. If I cannot defeat you with this level, allow me to show you," Ulquiorra said, until both he and the tailed beast felt a sudden surge of spiritual pressure emanating near Karakura town. "That's not a rancor. Whatever this THNG is, however, it needs to be dealt with now," Kurama thought to himself. Well, this new spiritual pressure was undoubtedly some sort of hollow, it was too different from the rancors that Kurama had encountered so far to be one of them. Its greater power, however, was enough to concern the tailed beast. Kurama turned to his opponent. "You know, I've gotten tired of fighting you, so I'll finish this battle quickly," he said as he proceeded to release more of his chakra. This chakra soon enveloped Kurama, turning into a fiery red chakra shroud that loosely resembled his true form, with one tail materialized, similar to his Jinchuriki's one-tailed form, except that this version was more of a fiery gas than acidic bubbles. Is this truly the power of a tailed beast? Ulquiorra thought to himself as considered his options. "Here I come," Kurama said. Before Ulquiorra could respond, he was struck by a claw-like extension of Kurama's shroud. Knocked back by the attack, Ulquiorra immediately regained his footing and created a new energy javelin. The Espada said calmly as he threw his projectile at the tailed beast. The attack hit Kurama cleanly, enveloping him in a massive explosion. Believing his battle had ended, Ulquiorra resealed his Zanpakuto and prepared to go to Harribel's aid in her battle, a presumptive move on his part. "Is that all you got, Ulquiorra?" the voice of Kurama asked, causing the Espada's eyes to widen. Ulquiorra turned his head and was shocked to see Kurama, still enveloped in his red shroud, on his fours completely unscathed. "How did you?" Ulquiorra asked before Kurama interrupted him. "That attack was nothing more than an annoying bug bite compared to what I'm about to use on you," Kurama explained before he took an unnaturally big breath. When Kurama began bloating, he proceeded to let out a massive roar. Having used his chakra to turn said roar into a massive shockwave, Kurama intended to end this fight with this attack. The shockwave was massive, being as wide as 100 yards and a matching height, it easily enveloped Ulquiorra and large part of the forest behind him up to 2 miles. The attack leveled the trees like toothpicks, tossed around very large boulders like rag dolls for miles, and left a trench in the ground 12 yards deep and 20 yards wide. Ulquiorra, who was caught in the middle of the blast, fared little better than the forest, having received several lacerations across his body. Ulquiorra's left leg was so badly mauled that he could barely stand on it. Kurama came before the limping Espada. "It's over, Ulquiorra. If you leave now, I'll let you live. If you keep fighting, however, I'll have no choice but to kill you," Kurama declared. Ulquiorra stared back at him, still unwilling to fall back. While the Espada knew that he was outmatched by his opponent, he had not received any orders to fall back and, unless that changed, he was compelled to continue this battle. At this point in the battle, however, a garganta suddenly opened behind Ulquiorra, surprising both him and Kurama. Kurama was further taken aback when a mysterious figure suddenly emerged from the portal. It was a man with black skin, purple hair and some sort of visor on his eyes, which appeared to be featureless and gave the impression that he was blind. He wore a sleeveless rancor jacket but, with no mask remnant on him and with the nature of his spiritual pressure, he was clearly no rancor. "Ulquiorra, the mission is complete. Have the other Espada fall back. Lord Aizen wants the analysis of the ninja's power as soon as possible," the man said, to which Ulquiorra nodded. Kurama was confused. Because of the nature of the altered seal, Kurama could see, within his mind, what was happening to Naruto and, to be perfectly blunt, the blonde-haired ninja was holding off his opponent and was not in danger of being captured anytime soon. If the Arankers had gone to great lengths to lure out Naruto but were ending their mission without their target secured, then they clearly had a different goal in mind. If that was the case, then what was it? Kurama looked intently at this mysterious man. "What are your intentions?" Kurama asked as he prepared himself in case the man attacked him. The man turned his attention to Kurama as Ulquiorra left to go somewhere without saying anything else. "That is none of your concern. You will find out soon enough, though," the man said as he re-entered the Garganta. As the portal closed behind the figure, Kurama, deciding not to pursue the man into an unknown territory, dissipated his transformation, reverting to his normal human form. As he retrieved and sheathed his sword, Kurama sensed the ominous spiritual pressure from earlier. To Kurama's shock, however, he could sense that this power had a familiar nature to it. "This is not good at all. I need to find Naruto, help him end his fight, and deal with whoever or whatever this being is before something terrible happens," Kurama thought to himself as he went to aid his knucklehead Jinchuriki. Next time, the meaning of sacrifice. Naruto vs Harribel, Part 1. Somewhere outside of Karakura town, human realm. Meanwhile. Recap. Naruto, sensing that the female Espada had moved to yet another location, shunpoed towards the direction of her trailing spiritual pressure as he readied himself for a tough fight. He didn't have to go as far as Kurama did with Ulquiorra in order to find his opponent, as she had traveled only half of the distance that Ulquiorra had. She had stopped in another forest clearing which had a small stream that flowed through its center. When Naruto arrived, he saw that the woman had already unsheathed her blade, which Naruto assumed was her Zanpakuto. The sword appeared to be a very wide and short blade, which would have been unassuming, except for the fact that the middle of the blade was completely hollow. The sword, in other words, consisted of nothing more than the edges of its blade. The woman was already in what Naruto thought was a fighting stance and was glaring at him. "Tell me. What is your name, boy?" she asked. "You're trying to capture me and you don't even know my name?" Naruto asked as reached into one of his ninja tool pouches, which he, like his headband and clothing, had also kept with him the whole time he was in Karakura town, as he also had Kenja eject from the hidden mechanism. He pulled out a knife. It was not the usual kunai knife, however, that he pulled out. Instead, Naruto pulled out what could best be described as a cross between a kunai and a trench knife that he wielded in his left hand. It was one Shikamaru's chakra blades, which he had lent to Naruto shortly before he was killed in his battle with Tobi. As Harribel raised an eyebrow at the unusual blades, Naruto decided to answer her question. "I am Naruto Uzumaki. And you are?" he declared as he channeled some of his wind chakra in the chakra blade. He decided not to use his Zanpakuto's Shikai just yet. "I am Tear Harribel, the third Espada," the woman said as the hollow portion of her blade was filled with a yellow-colored spiritual pressure. The two opponents then charged at each other. Harribel made the first move as she thrusted her sword at Naruto's heart. Naruto sidestepped the attack, moving to Harribel's right. The Aranker managed to quickly recover the parry and swung her blade at Naruto, who proceeded to block it with his chakra blade. Harribel was surprised by the sharpness and strength of the wind-enhanced knife. The female Espada had to apply even more of her spiritual pressure to her blade, just so that she could hold her ground. "Take this!" Naruto yelled as he attempted to stab Harribel in the chest with his Zanpakuto, which caught the Espada even further by surprise. Harribel was barely able to evade that attack, being using her Sanito to create some distance between herself and her opponent. Harribel tried to prepare another beam of yellow spiritual pressure until she saw, to her horror, that Naruto had already flash-stepped in front of the Aranker. She barely had time to block the ninja's two blades before she was pushed back several feet. After a series of further attacks, parries, and counter-attacks, all of which occurred at speeds that even someone with the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan could never hope to read, both blondes backed up several yards from each other. Harribel had been badly injured, with several moderate lacerations across her arms, while Naruto was simply trying to keep an eye on his opponent as he figured that Harribel, being the third Espada, was holding back against him. Harribel was taken aback by the speed and ferocity of Naruto's attacks. Most Soul Reapers and Rankers would have stopped their attacks for a very short respite if their opponent did the same. Naruto, on the other hand, was relentless as he kept attacking Harribel again and again, having trained to fight differently. He only stopped, briefly of course, after 20 minutes passed since their fight began. What really surprised Harribel, however, was the sheer volume of resolve reflected in Naruto's blade. Her opponent's conviction was so strong that she could almost feel it 10 yards away. As Harribel eyed Naruto, wondering where his drive even comes from, he decided to question her. "Why did you stop fighting me all of a sudden?" he asked as the Espada narrowed her eyes at him. "I was just curious. Where does this resolve I sense from within you come from?" Harribel asked as Naruto simply tensed up as if he was expecting the rancor to attack if he answered. I don't know why you give a damn about my resolve. If you need to know why, however, it's because I can't afford to give in to despair, especially now. I have people back home whom I've made promises to, people who believed in me. If they were willing to believe in me then I have to believe in myself. And it's because of that I know that I won't lose to you or whoever this Aizen guy sends after me. Naruto explained as the thoughts of his friends back in his own world went through his mind. Harribel scoffed at this. You speak as though you're willing to sacrifice everything for those people, even your own life, Harribel said as Naruto glared at her. And what do you know about sacrifice? Naruto asked. I know more than you ever could, Naruto Uzumaki. Sacrifice is, after all, the aspect of death that I symbolize, Harribel explained. When Naruto appeared to be confused by this, the Espada proceeded to explain how each of the Espada represented an aspect of death. Naruto his blood boil with each word his opponent said. Harribel, unaware of the circumstances of Naruto's death, then dropped the ball, so to speak. The existence of the Espada is built upon the noble sacrifices of its members. If I were to lose here the sacrifices made in this battle would have all been for nothing. I hold within me the resolve of those who were, and still are, willing to sacrifice their lives. That is something you will never be able to comprehend, Harribel declared as she prepared to continue the fight. It was then that she noticed that Naruto had put his head down. Harribel then sensed something that she hadn't felt within her opponent. It was a sense of rage, the likes of which she has never felt, that flared up so violently that it appeared to be covering him in flames, right down to his Shihakusho. After a few moments, however, Harribel realized that the flames she was seeing were actually real and, curiously, yellow in color. The Espada also realized that her opponent's hair now had two horn-like extensions at the front. As Harribel's eyes widened in terror at the increase in Naruto's power as he placed the chakra blade back in his pouch. Naruto then looked at Harribel's eyes had changed to orange, as far as colors were concerned, before he spoke. You talk as though you know everything about the meaning of sacrifice, but you don't know a damn thing about it, Harribel. He roared as held his left hand into the air. Naruto then had two chakra arms form as he created a Rasen Shuriken. He would have only needed one chakra arm if it wasn't for the fact that he still held Kenja in his right hand. Oh no, Harribel thought as she had another beam of spiritual pressure build up in her hollowed out blade. Bull is all. Harribel said as she launched her attack just as Naruto finished creating his jutsu. Through wind style. Rasen Shuriken. Naruto roared as he threw the wind release jutsu. The two attacks collided and the Rasen Shuriken, to Harribel's horror, cut right through her attack like it was paper. She didn't realize that Naruto had learned to use spiritual pressure to enhance the power of his jutsus and, in fact, could use his chakra to do the same thing with his Soul Reaper abilities. The Rasen Shuriken hit the ground right next to Harribel and exploded. Despite the size of the attack, which was large enough to level a third of Karakura town had it been caught in the blast, Harribel was able to dodge the attack, though not without injury, as she now had several injuries across her body. Naruto then appeared before the Espada. He had stopped his use of the Kurama's chakra but was still wielding his Zanpakuto. Harribel straightened herself as Naruto spoke. You want to know how I died, Harribel? I gave my own life to stop a man who was threatening my friends, my home, my world, because they all mean more to me than my own life, and I'm still willing to protect all of them, no matter what happens to me, and regardless of what it takes to keep them safe. So the next time try to see if you have anything, anyone, you're willing to fight and die for. Then you can look me in the eye and talk to me about the meaning for the word sacrifice, Naruto explained as held Kenja in front of him in a backhanded grip. Now bring out your full power so we can finish this fight already, Harribel. Naruto roared. Harribel, having decided to honor her opponent's challenge, stretched her right hand in front of her while having the blade of her Zanpakuto pointed downward. Destroy, Tiburon Spanish for shark, Harribel said. The Espada was then enveloped by a heart-shaped surge of water that closed around her, forming a cocoon-like cyclone. Naruto proceeded to release his blade. Ride the wind, Kenja, Naruto said as the explosion of spiritual pressure, with the gusts of wind that accompanied it, that came with the release of his Zanpakuto, soon enveloped him. Somewhere outside of Karakura town, human realm. Current time. Naruto emerged from his Shikai's explosion, the familiar BM staff in hand, and turned to face his opponent as she sliced herself out of the water cocoon. As Naruto got a clear view of Harribel, his perverted nature nearly emerged at the sight. All of Harribel's clothes were gone. Harribel had lost her 3 braids which made her blonde hair messier, though it had already been messy to begin with, and had 2 blue lightning bolt markings on both sides of her face, which was now visible. The collar with extensions covered her also came with the addition of spolders on her shoulders and 2 ribbon-like protrusions on her back that bore a resemblance to shark fins, while a thin, spine-like structure had formed on her stomach and spanned from her waist to the underside of her breasts. Harribel now wore a miniskirt that consisted of bones that appeared to surround some sort of dark undergarment, as well as a pair of knee-length boots and elbow-length gloves. Her sword had also undergone a drastic change as well. It now looked like an elongated shark tooth that had gill-like markings on both sides of the blade and a very unusual hilt that completely covered her right hand with a handguard that looked as if it was just the bottom part of the blade. Naruto almost allowed his perverted nature to surface at the sight of Harribel's revealing appearance. The only thing that prevented an outburst was the fact that Kenja reminded Naruto that the Arrancar was still his opponent and was still after him. Naruto turned his attention to the Arrancar. "Are you ready, Naruto Uzumaki?" Harribel asked. "Let's finish this." Naruto roared as he began to channel strong gusts of wine through his staff while water began to pour out of the gill markings of Harribel's blade. It didn't take long for either combatant to build up a large attack with their respective elements. There was one difference between the attacks, however, besides the elements used. The attack Harribel was about to use was a specific technique, whereas Naruto was simply building up a large windstorm, similar to the one he used on Ichigo when he had first activated his Zanpakuto's Shikai. That would do little to help Harribel, however, as she prepared to unleash her attack. "Espada," Harribel said as she unleashed a rushing surge of high-pressure water at Naruto, who unleashed the windstorm that he had created. The two attacks soon impacted each other and attempted to overpower the other attack. The spiraling surge of water that Harribel had launched, however, was unable to overcome Naruto's windstorm, which is more like a wall of wind than a simple gust. The unrelenting barrage of water and wind which was occurring 1.5 miles above the ground and, as a result, created a large torrential downpour that would have either blown a person to bits or drowned them if anyone had been unfortunate enough to find themselves in the area. Thankfully the two blondes were the only ones around for several miles. The only reason that Harribel's Cascada was not blown away by the wind attack was because Naruto had intentionally made his attack weak enough so that she would stand in place. Harribel didn't realize this, however, until it was too late. "I, BMFK," Naruto yelled. Harribel turned around and, to her horror, saw that Naruto had appeared out of nowhere and had snuck up from behind to deliver a sneak attack. Harribel barely managed to dodge the incoming attacks, though she assumed that it was a one attack and would not have known otherwise since she dodged it. After landing on the ground, Harribel prepared to use another Cascada until, to her further shock, she saw that 8 wooden poles, similar to Naruto's Shikai, appeared to come out of the earth itself and surrounded the Espada in a circular pattern. Harribel was then horrified to see that, after an orange light emanated from said poles, each of the poles unleashed 2 sets of very strong and long chains began to wrap around her. Despite using all her strength, the Espada was unable to break free of these new bonds. She saw that her opponent now stood before had one knee on the ground while he held his staff as if he slammed it to the ground. "Sosen no Fukin," royalty translates to seal of the ancestor, Naruto said before a light matching that light of the poles emanated from the Zanpakuto. At this point the wood from the poles began to somehow stretch and merged with T wood from the other poles, creating a wooden box of sorts. That would have been the end of the battle for Harribel. Thankfully for Harribel, Naruto's attention was suddenly directed at something else, something that was emitting a very ominous spiritual pressure. "That spiritual pressure, does this mean that shit? This is bad," Naruto thought to himself as he pondered his next move. This lapse allowed Harribel to break the incomplete seal. This forced Naruto to turn his attention back to the Arrancar and caused Kenja to become rather annoyed at her wielder. "Didn't I tell that you had to keep absolute focus on making until it was completed? Otherwise your opponent will break out easily," Kenja said. The Sosen no Fukin, while unbreakable when completed, had to be completed in order for it to actually be effective, and Naruto, in order to complete said seal, had to focus all his attention on performing, hence the reason this technique works best in a one-on-one fight. Naruto sighed at Kenja's comment before making a "no shit, Sherlock" type of expression. "I already know that. Don't tell that this spiritual pressure isn't making you nervous." Naruto roared in his mind as he easily dodged a slash from Harribel. Naruto's Zanpakuto, though far more level-headed than he was, also had a mischievous side that annoyed even a prankster like him. "I know what you're implying, and, yes, it does have me concerned as well. We have to focus on the opponent in front of us before we can," Kenja explained before that same spiritual pressure emanated yet again. This time, however, it was even darker and far more powerful than last time. This fact wasn't lost on either blade or wielder, though the idea Naruto had in mind to deal with both Harribel and this new threat had Kenja concerned. "Are you sure you want to do that, Naruto? His spiritual pressure is far beyond everyone else you faced, and considering who he is, you won't be able to deal with that foe," Kenja said, despite the fact that she knew that Naruto's mind was already set before he interrupted her. "I looks like I won't have to, Kenja," Naruto said. Harribel, meanwhile, had backed up several yards when she sensed a nearby presence that was closing in on this fight. Naruto had already sensed this person and was actually referring to him in his conversation with his blade. That person was none other than Kurama, who had went to find Naruto after his battle with Ulquiorra had been interrupted by Tosen. Kurama looked at Harribel for a few moments before he turned his attention to his Jinchuriki when he realized that the former Vasto Lord had no intention of making a move against him or Naruto yet. "Are you alright, Naruto?" Kurama asked. He waited until Naruto nodded in reply before he said anything else. "I'm sure you sense that dark spiritual pressure near Karakura town," he said, as if it were a question. "Yeah, I did." "Do you think that his Naruto was about to ask before Kurama responded in the affirmative. "If something is not done now I fear Ichigo will lose himself. I'm afraid you'll have to have Kenja take her on if we're to have any chance of stopping him," the tailed beast replied. Naruto, Kurama, and Kenja, who overheard everything that went on around her master, had learned from Kisuke and Yuruchi about Ichigo's inner hollow and the current danger it currently posed. They assumed that this spiritual pressure was that inner hollow taking over Ichigo's body based on how the nature of the spiritual pressure felt similar to the chakra of a Jinchuriki when he or she lost control of their tailed beast. Naruto nodded in reply to his friend's request as Harribel, who was listening to their conversation from a distance, narrowed her eyes at her foes upon hearing Kurama's suggestion. "What are you talking about?" the Ranker asked. Naruto turned to face her as he raised his staff in front of him, holding it with one hand in a horizontal position. "I don't know if Ichigo and the other Soul Reapers are able to do this to the extent that I'm able to, but I think they would refer to this as the Mama Kami. I can't remember how to say it," Naruto said in embarrassment. Naruto got steamed when he noticed that Kurama tried to suppress a snicker and doing it rather poorly, while Kenja was outright laughing at him and doing it hard enough that she fell to the snow-covered floor of the ninja's spiritual state and his predicament. "I believe you meant to say the materialization of my Zanpakuto," Kurama said once he suppressed the snicker that tried to surface number. Naruto sighed at this, making a note to both remember the term and to get payback on both of his inner residents before he focused his attention to Harribel, who was unamused by her opponent's stupidity. "What Kurama just said," Naruto stated before he channeled his spiritual energy into his staff. After a minute or so the Zanpakuto vanished in a brilliant flash of orange-colored light. Harribel, not surprisingly, was surprised at this development. "What in Ka?" she said before she noticed something looming above her head, something with spiritual pressure identical to Naruto's in both nature and amount. The Espada looked up in and was shocked to see a young, white-haired, winged female in a very brightly colored attire standing before her. What really shocked Harribel, though, was that this person was now wielding the same staff that Naruto was just wielding. While Harribel eyed Kenja very closely, the Zanpakuto descended gently to the ground. When her feet touched the ground her wings, which were eagle-like in form, dissipated. This was something that Kenja did whenever she was on the ground so that the wings do not hinder her when moving on foot. Kenja could, of course, rematerialize those wings instantaneously whenever she wanted to. As Kenja prepared to face Harribel, Naruto decided to speak with her before he and Kurama left. "Be careful," Naruto warned Kenja, to which she nodded. "Oh now, Naruto, before it's too late," she said. Naruto then went to Kurama's side before they went towards the direction that Ichigo's spiritual pressure was emanating from. As Zanpakuto now faced Harribel as said opponent, the Ranker prepared to face yet another tough opponent. It hadn't taken the very perceptive Harribel more than a few minutes to figure out what this new opponent was since the staff she wielded and her conversation with both Uzumaki and the man called Kurama gave her identity away. "So you're the spirit of that boy Zanpakuto. I wonder if you're as strong as your wielder," Harribel said as Kenja's got into her fighting stance, which was much more refined than Naruto's. "Why don't come at me and find out, fish woman," Kenja said in a clearly mocking tone. While Harribel was clearly insulted by Kenja's nickname for her, the Ranker refused to let it show. "Very well then. If you're so eager to face then behold my power. With the bite of a shark you shall sink," Harribel said before she and Kenja sensed the spiritual pressure of someone they did not recognize. Kenja, despite not knowing who this newcomer was, could tell from their spiritual pressure that this person, whoever they might be, was not an Ranker. Kenja was proven right when the person in question appeared. Both Kenja and Harribel were rather surprised at the sight of the person before them. A relatively petite woman in a Gate 13 captain's uniform. The young woman looked around and sighed in frustration, as if she was expecting something, or someone, to be there. She turned her attention to Kenja, a scowl etched onto her face. "Who or what the hell are you?" she said as if she was issuing Kenja an order. The Zanpakuto suddenly had one thought in mind. "I can already tell that she's going to be pain in the ass to deal with," Kenja thought to herself. Somewhere outside of Karakura town, human realm. Current time. Soifin began to glare at Kenja when she failed to answer, though the Zanpakuto was actually delaying her answer. This was because she tended to ignore strangers who were rude to either her, Naruto, or Kurama. Kenja was, for the most part, a calm, level-headed, and cheerful soul, with a knack for mischief that was only surpassed by her master. When she felt that the situation called for it, however, Kenja's personality, as she told Naruto during his training, would change to whatever she needed it to be, and in situations like the one she found herself in now, she tended to be much more stern and serious, much to Soifin's displeasure. "I ask you a question. Are going to have to make me force an answer out of you?" The head of the stealth force asked with a great deal of frustration in her voice. Kenja sighed at this. "If you were willing to give a little common courtesy I would be much more willing to answer your question, Soul Reaper," Kenja replied. Soifin was even more annoyed with Kenja but, realizing that she was not her enemy, the captain decided to swallow enough of her pride to oblige the spirit. "Fine. Who or what the hell are you, please?" Soifin asked. "Now was that so difficult? As for your question, my name is Kenja and I am his Zanpakuto," Kenja replied. After failing to register the Kenja's words for a minute or so, the captain of the 2nd division let her mouth gape open in surprise. "I know that you have a lot more questions, Reaper, but now is not the time to answer them," Kenja said as she directed Soifin's attention to Harribel, who had managed to observe everything her two opponents were saying and didn't even attempt to seize the opportunity to attack them. After a few more minutes of gaping, Soifin finally snapped out of her shock and nodded in reply. "Very well, then, but you will answer my questions when this is over," Soifin said as she also turned to face the ranker before her. Harribel responded by turning her gaze to the Soul Reaper before her. "And who are you?" the Espada asked Soifin. After a brief introduction on the part of both combatants, they readied themselves for this 2 versus -1 battle. Kenja, who was also ready for a fight, made the first move as she flash-stepped towards Harribel, who was barely able to avoid the incoming downward strike. As Harribel moved a few yards back, she saw that Soifin had appeared behind her and was about to strike the ranker with her right middle finger. Just before Soifin could land a blow, however, Harribel used her Sanito to escape the captain's blow by a few millimeters. Harribel then charged at the two females before she had her blade above their heads. The former Vasto Lords attempted to slash at Soifin, only to find that she had flash-stepped out of way of her attack. Harribel had to rely on her instincts to dodge the captain's next attack, which she noted to be the same type of strike as the last time. Harribel realized that something was up with that strike and, after a series of further attacks, parries, and counter-attacks from both Kenja and Soifin, all of which had gotten to within millimeters from striking Harribel, she finally managed to temporarily get herself out of the hornet's nest, so to speak. Harribel moved at least 20 yards back, just in case her opponents tried to double-team her yet again at any moment. As Harribel eyed her opponents, she finally got a good look at the finger Soifin tried to hit her with. She was surprised to see that the finger was encased in a stinger-like blade that was twice as long as the finger it encased. The blade had a small chain that linked it to a black and gold gauntlet that now enveloped her right hand. Harribel realized that the gauntlet, which she hadn't noticed as she didn't get a good enough look at it earlier, was actually the release of the captain's Zanpakuto, and that the attack just now had to be related to whatever its ability is. "I can't let her attacks land or I'll probably be finished," Harribel thought to herself. Harribel realized that despite the tensions between her two opponents, as well as the fact that they don't know each other at all, they managed to fight seamlessly as a team. The Aranker realized that she had to end this battle soon as her Zanpakuto began to generate a large amount of water. "Espada," she said as she launched another massive surge of water. Before the attack could reach either of Harribel's opponents, they both used their shunpo to easily dodge the attack. "You do realize that one of us has already seen that attack, right? If you have any other tricks up your sleeve I would suggest that you use them now. If you don't you'll die here," Kenja warned the Aranker as she prepared to use the IDBMFK. At this point a massive amount of spiritual pressure from what appeared to be two different beings began to emanate from somewhere closer to Karakura town. Kenja recognized who the two beings were and understood what that meant. Soifin, on the other hand, was not sure what was going on, except for the fact that the situation was now very serious wherever these spiritual pressures were coming from. Soifin took note of Kenja's reaction and decided to ask her about this new problem. "Who are those two? Their spiritual pressure is off the scale. I'm amazed that I'm able to sense their power at all," Soifin said. Soifin, like powerful soul reapers, knew that there is a point where one's spiritual pressure becomes so powerful that only those on a similar level can feel it, and these two beings were reaching that point. "That's Naruto and Ichigo, or at least the inner hollow within Ichigo. My master went to stop that hollow before Ichigo loses himself forever," Kenja explained. That explanation answered a lot more than the question that Soifin had asked. Not only did Soifin now know who those two were, but she now knew that the Zanpakuto, if that's what this being truly was, belonged to the person that Soifin was looking for. Though Soifin decided to keep her grudge hidden for the time being, Kenja had already guessed that the Soul Reaper captain had, for whatever reason, been looking for her master. Both Soifin and Kenja, unaware of how similar their thoughts were at the moment, decided to keep an eye on the other for the time being. Kenja snapped out of her line of thought first before she spoke. In any case, we need to deal with the opponent standing before us first before we can even think of heading towards the other battle, Kenja said as she finished creating her eye. Her conversation with Soifin having forced her to cancel out the previous one. Right, Soifin said as she turned to face Harribel as well. Just as it appeared that the battle was about to resume, the three females suddenly sensed the spiritual pressure of someone that was heading this way. After a couple of minutes that person appeared beside Harribel. It was Ulquiorra who, after withdrawing from his fight as per Aizen's orders, had already told Coyote and Lilynette to fall back and had to do the same with Grimmjow after this. Harribel was surprised to see that the Espada just a rank under her had been beaten like a drum thanks to Kurama, with the bruises and lacerations being far worse than her injuries. Even Ulquiorra's high-speed regeneration, which he had kept unlike his fellow rankers, was having a hard time healing him as Kurama's chakra was still a little acidic to any person other than Naruto, though this only became an issue when Kurama himself fought someone like he did now. Harribel, we've received orders to fall back to Lost Notches from Lord Aizen. You should be prepared to present the analysis to Lord Aizen when I return, Ulquiorra said. Harribel, though of a higher rank than Cypher, nodded her head in confirmation since she knew that Ulquiorra was acting on their leader's orders, since she knew he was truly loyal to Aizen like she was. What of Grimmjow, Yami, Coyote, and Lilynette? Harribel asked as she resealed her Zanpakuto, reverting back to the form she was in before she released her blade. Harribel had asked this out of curiosity. While Sterk and Lilynette were unlikely to argue against those orders, Grimmjow would undoubtedly be a different matter, while Yami, thanks to the power of Naruto's Rasengan, was still unconscious. Coyote and Lilynette have already retreated and Yami was carried back to Lost Notches by 3 other rankers. I'm going to relay these orders to Grimmjow right now, Ulquiorra said before Harribel opened a Garganta. Before she entered the portal, however, she turned to face both of her opponents. You two have won this battle. Prepare yourselves, however, for we will meet again. That goes for the boy as well, Harribel declared as she entered the gateway to the world of the Hollows. Soifin, determined to finish the 2 rankers, was about to use her flash step before Kenja stopped her. We don't have time to deal with any more opponents. They're already falling back, so should just let them go for the time being and focus on the bigger problem near Karakura town. The rankers can be dealt with another time, Soifin, so be a little patient, the Zanpakuto reasoned. The commander of the stealth force scowled at the spirit for a few moments before she said anything. You better be right about the seriousness of the threat. If you're not, then I'll make that you end up in the nest of maggots, Soifin said, though she couldn't obviously go through with that threat. She was just in a bad mood as she had been all day long and, since her patience had already thinned out to the breaking point by that moment in time, the fact that she consented to Kenja's reasoning was nothing short of miraculous. Both Kenja and Soifin then flash-stepped towards the still present spiritual pressures of both Naruto and Ichigo as the Garganta closed behind Harribel. Ulquiorra used his Sanito to head in the same direction as the 2 females, since Grimmjow had targeted Ichigo from the beginning of the invasion. Ulquiorra assumed, naturally, that the 6th Espada was somewhere nearby. Ulquiorra was also curious as to what Grimmjow did to the piece of trash to have caused such a disturbance. Kurosaki residence, Karakura town. Shortly before the Espada's retreat began. Sasuke and Yuruchi had arrived just a few moments after Naruto and Kurama had escaped from Urahara's shop to enlist the help of Issen, Ichigo's father, in the fight that was going on in and around Karakura town. Though Issen was already going to head into the fray, he agreed to contact Ryokan, who was an acquaintance of his and Ryu's father, as well as a very powerful Quincy. Issen, Kisuke, and Yuruchi were initially surprised to find that Ryokan actually agreed to join the fight. The reluctant Quincy, who was also the director of the Karakura hospital, almost never got involved in spiritual matters, with the training he gave his son to help him regain his Quincy powers, being first time he had done so in years. The feelings of surprise on the part of the 3 Reapers dissipated, however, when Ryokan told them through the phone that he was only going to help them repel the Rankers this one time, and that he had only agreed to help them after one of the Rankers blew up one of the rooms on the top floor of the hospital with a Zero. The attack had only destroyed that room, and while no one was hurt in that incident, Ryokan realized that, in this case, helping the dead would be in his best interest. As the Soul Reapers waited for Ryokan's arrival, Issen decided to end the eerie that permeated the room since he had ended his call. So I'm guessing that Aizen is on edge over this Naruto kid? Issen asked. It would appear so. I can't say I'm surprised, though, as I'm sure that the arrival of the sages reincarnate was not something that Aizen had taken into account. No one could have imagined that this would have happened so suddenly, after all, Yuruchi replied, to which Issen sighed. Issen had met Naruto during the week before he began his Soul Reaper training. Issen thought he was a good kid despite his flaws and had taken a liking to the young shinobi. It was also during that time that Naruto had discovered Isen's little secret during an incident where the Kurosaki had helped Naruto fight off aminos. Isen made Naruto promise that he wouldn't tell Ichigo anything about what had happened that day, which Naruto agreed to do under a few conditions, of course. As Isen got out of his train of thought, he suddenly remembered something important. Kisuke, have they been Isen was about to ask when an ominous, yet frighteningly familiar, spiritual pressure suddenly emanated from somewhere in town. Is that who I think it is, Kisuke? Yoruichi asked, though she already knew the answer. Kisuke simply nodded in response. Then I guess it's a good thing that I've finally arrived, a male voice said. The three Soul Reapers turned to where the source of the voice, which was the front door of the house, and saw that Raiken was already inside since Isen had left the door open. After Kisuke took few more minutes to explain the entire situation to Raiken, the four people in the room decided to deal with the problem in town first, agreeing to locate Naruto and Kurama once that had been taken care of before they headed towards the battle that was threatening to destroy Karakura town. What if Naruto goes to find allies in Bleach? End here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.